Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights of the hospital emergency room cast harsh shadows across Matthew Turner's face as he watched the nurse carefully clean the gravel embedded in his daughter's palms. Emma's small hands trembled, not from pain she couldn't feel much below her waist, but from exhaustion and fear. At 5 years old, she'd already learned more about suffering than most adults would in a lifetime. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "I tried to be brave." Matthew's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. He knelt beside the examination table, gently brushing her dark hair from her tear-stained face. "You were brave, sweetheart. You were so brave." The doctor, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, documented the injuries with a professional detachment that Matthew envied. Road rash on both palms, bruised knees, a deep cut on her left shin that would need stitches, minor head trauma from a fall, all sustained, according to Emma's halting account, while she dragged herself 3 blocks from her grandparents' house to their own home. Without her wheelchair, Matthew had been an architect for 12 years, designing buildings that would stand for generations, but nothing in his training had prepared him for the rage that consumed him now. It was different from anger, colder, more focused, a glacier moving inexorably forward. "Mr. Turner?" Dr. Chen's voice pulled him back. "I need to ask Emma some questions. It's standard procedure for injuries like this." He nodded, his hand never leaving Emma's shoulder. "Emma, honey, can you tell me what happened today?" Emma's lower lip quivered. She glanced at Matthew, seeking permission, and he squeezed her shoulder gently. "It's okay, Emma, tell the doctor. Grandma Margaret and Grandpa Herbert were watching me while Daddy worked. Mommy's away." Emma's voice was small, frightened. "They said they needed to go to the store. They told me to stay in the living room and watch TV." Matthew's blood ran cold. He'd left Emma with his in-laws dozens of times over the past year, especially since Candace had taken that contract job in Seattle. The arrangement had seemed perfect. Her parents lived just a few blocks away. They'd eagerly volunteered, and Emma seemed comfortable with them. When they came back, Emma continued, her words coming faster now, as if she needed to get them out before she lost her courage. "I asked where my chair was. Grandpa Herbert said they sold it." Dr. Chen's pen froze. "They sold your wheelchair?" Emma nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Grandma Margaret said it was cluttering their house, and they got $50 for it. I asked how I would get home and—" She hiccuped, sobbing. "And Grandpa Herbert said to walk or crawl. They didn't care. He said I was faking anyway, that there was nothing really wrong with me." Matthew's vision blurred red. Dr. Chen set down her clipboard, her professional mask slipping to reveal fury. "They told a 5-year-old child in a wheelchair to walk home? And you?" She looked at Matthew. "How far is their house from yours?" 3 blocks. Maybe half a mile." His voice sounded distant to his own ears. "She crawled half a mile? A neighbor found her," Matthew said, each word carefully controlled. "Evelyn Kelly. She lives 2 houses down from us. She called me at work." He remembered that call, the panic in Mrs. Kelly's voice. Emma's crying in the background, the longest 15-minute drive of his life. Dr. Chen stood abruptly. "I'm calling Child Protective Services." "No." The word came out sharper than Matthew intended. "Please, Dr. Chen, give me time to handle this." The doctor studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Turner, this is serious. This is neglect at minimum, possibly abuse." "I know." Matthew's voice was steady now, that cold focus settling over him like armor. "But Emma's been through enough tonight. I don't want her traumatized by more strangers, more questions. Please, give me 48 hours. Dr. Chen's expression softened as she looked at Emma, who'd fallen into an exhausted sleep against her father's chest. 48 hours. But I'm documenting everything. If you don't report this, I will. I'll report it, Matthew promised. And he meant it. After the stitches, after the prescriptions for pain medication Emma wouldn't need but he filled anyway, after he'd carried his sleeping daughter to his car and driven home in silence, Matthew sat in his study. The house was quiet. Too quiet. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over Candace's number. His wife separated for 6 months now, though they hadn't filed for divorce needed to know. But it was past midnight in Seattle, and Candace had made it clear during their last conversation that she needed space, needed to focus on her career. Their marriage had crumbled slowly, like a building with a faulty foundation. She blamed him for working too much, for not being present enough. He'd blamed her for her parents' constant interference, for choosing them over him in every argument. Emma's diagnosis 3 years ago, spinal muscular atrophy, type 2, had been the earthquake that exposed every crack. Candace had wanted to try every experimental treatment, regardless of cost or Emma's comfort. Matthew had wanted to focus on making Emma's life as normal and happy as possible. Her parents, Herbert and Margaret Phelps, had sided with Candace, naturally, and had made Matthew's life a living hell for giving up on their granddaughter. The irony wasn't lost on him that these same people who'd accused him of not doing enough had just sold Emma's wheelchair for $50. Matthew opened his laptop instead, his architect's mind already building the framework of what needed to happen. He wasn't a man prone to rash action. Every building he designed started with careful research, precise measurements, a foundation that could weather any storm. This would be no different. He started with documentation. He downloaded the photos Dr. Chen had taken, backed up Emma's medical records, requested copies of the ER visit. He recorded a video of Emma's account while it was fresh in his memory, speaking clearly and calmly, noting the date and time. Then he began to research. Herbert Rowland, he'd never taken the Phelps name, a point of pride for a man who'd inherited his father's manufacturing business, and Margaret Phelps had been fixtures in the community for 40 years. Herbert ran Rowland Industrial Solutions, a mid-sized company that supplied custom parts to automotive manufacturers. Margaret had been a nurse before retiring 5 years ago. Respected, established, connected. Matthew had always been an outsider to them. The boy from nowhere who'd gotten their daughter pregnant in college and trapped her into marriage. Never mind that he'd graduated top of his class, that he'd built a successful career, that he'd loved Candace desperately for years. He dug deeper, pulling property records, business filings, tax documents, all public information, nothing illegal. An architect learned to navigate bureaucracy, to find the load-bearing walls in any structure, and what he found made his pulse quicken. Herbert and Margaret's house, the Victorian mansion on Maple Street that had been in the Rowland family for 3 generations, was mortgaged to the hilt. Not unusual in itself, but the timing was interesting. 6 months ago, right when Candace left for Seattle, they'd taken out a substantial home equity loan. Their business, Rowland Industrial Solutions, had recently lost 2 major contracts. Public record, buried in local business journals, Matthew subscribed to for professional reasons. They were in financial trouble. The wheelchair sale for $50 suddenly made 6 cents. Not that they needed the money, $50 was nothing, but that they were the kind of people who'd squeeze every penny from anything they deemed worthless, including their granddaughter's medical equipment. Matthew's phone buzzed. A text from Candace, Mom called. Said you took Emma to ER for attention. Is this another one of your stunts? His hands shook as he read it. Another text followed. Don't drag my parents into whatever game you're playing. He wanted to call her, to scream, to make her understand. Instead, he took a screenshot of the texts, added them to his growing file, and replied simply, Your parents sold Emma's wheelchair while babysitting. She crawled home. ER doc treated road rash and stitches. All documented. He sent a photo of Emma's bandaged hands. The phone rang immediately. He declined the call, then powered off the phone entirely. In the morning, Emma woke up crying, disoriented by the pain medication wearing off and the absence of her wheelchair. Matthew carried her downstairs, settled her on the couch with her favorite breakfast chocolate chip pancakes shaped like stars, and called his office to take emergency leave. Take all the time you need, his boss, Tom Fuller, said immediately. Tom had a daughter Emma's age, had watched Matthew struggle through the separation. Family first, always. Next, Matthew called the wheelchair manufacturer. The custom chair had cost $8,000, most of it covered by insurance, but with a significant out-of-pocket expense he'd barely managed. It would take 6 weeks to get a replacement, even with insurance approval. Can we expedite it? Matthew asked. For a child? Let me see what I can do. We might have a loaner. I'll pay whatever it takes. She needs it now. By noon, a rental wheelchair was delivered. It wasn't perfect, but Emma's face lit up when she saw it, and that was enough. At 1 o'clock, Matthew's doorbell rang. Herbert Rowland stood on his porch, all 6 feet and 200 pounds of him, his face red with anger. Who the hell do you think you are? Telling lies about us to Candace. Matthew didn't open the screen door. Mr. Rowland, I think you should leave. That girl is fine. She's been using that chair as a crutch, and you've been enabling her. Margaret and I decided. You decided to sell my daughter's medically necessary equipment without my permission and then told her to crawl home. She could walk if she wanted to. All she needs is... She has spinal muscular atrophy. It's degenerative. She can't walk. Herbert's face purpled. Doctors don't know everything. Margaret was a nurse for 30 years, and she says a lot of things. None of them excuse what you did. You've turned Candace against us. You've poisoned her mind, and now you're using that kid as a weapon. Matthew's control wavered. Just for a second. Get off my property. Or what? You'll call the cops? Go ahead. We're pillars of this community, Turner. You're nobody. A divorced deadbeat who can't even keep his wife happy. We're not divorced yet. Give it time. Herbert's smile was ugly. Candace is coming home. We've convinced her this Seattle thing is a mistake. And when she does, we're filing for custody. That little girl needs a real family, not some bitter architect who works 60-hour weeks. The door slammed shut in Herbert's face, but not before Matthew saw the truth in the older man's eyes. This wasn't about Emma. It had never been about Emma. This was about control, about winning, about making sure Matthew Turner knew his place. Margaret Phelps called an hour later, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Matthew, darling, Herbert told me there was a misunderstanding. I'm sure Emma exaggerated. She didn't exaggerate. I have medical documentation. Well, children do have such active imaginations. And you know, that wheelchair was taking up so much space in our guest room. We did tell Candace we'd be selling some things. You told Candace you'd be selling Emma's medical equipment. A pause. We might have mentioned we were decluttering. Really, Matthew, you're being very dramatic about this. Emma is fine. She needed stitches. Children get scrapes all the time. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Herbert and I simply think it's time Emma learned to be more independent. The doctors said she might walk again with physical therapy. The doctors said no such thing. Well, I'm a nurse. Matthew, I think I know better than you what's medically possible. You were a nurse. Past tense. And even if you weren't, you had no right. We have every right. We're her grandparents. We love her more than you ever could, you selfish, ungrateful. Matthew hung up. He sat in silence for a long moment, staring at his laptop screen, at the files he'd been compiling. Then, he opened a new document and began to type. He wrote down everything. The phone calls, Herbert's visit, the threats about custody, Margaret's dismissal of Emma's injuries. He noted times, dates, exact quotes where he could remember them. Then he started making calls. First, to his lawyer, Derek York, a sharp-minded man who'd handled the separation papers. Derek, I need you to file an emergency motion. Supervised visitation only for Candace's parents, and I want it documented why. What happened? Matthew explained. Derek's silence grew heavier with each detail. Jesus, Matt. Okay, I'll file first thing tomorrow. But you know this is going to get ugly, right? If they're threatening custody, let it get ugly. I'm done playing nice. Second call, to Dr. Chen. I want to file a formal report. Child Protective Services, police, whoever needs to know. Thank God, Dr. Chen said. I have everything ready. Third call, to Evelyn Kelly, the neighbor who'd found Emma. Mrs. Kelly, I need you to write down everything you saw when you found Emma. Everything she said. The condition she was in, all of it. Evelyn's voice shook with anger. I already started, Matthew. That poor baby. I've known the Rowlands for 20 years, and I've never seen such cruelty. By evening, the foundation was laid. But Matthew kept digging, because there was something nagging at him, a structural weakness he could feel but not yet see. He pulled up Rowland Industrial Solutions' recent filings again, cross-referenced them with county records, business licenses, environmental permits, and there it was, a permit violation from 3 months ago, quickly settled, barely mentioned in the local news. But the settlement amount was substantial, and it had required Herbert to personally guarantee certain environmental remediation standards. Standards that, according to a follow-up inspection report Matthew found buried in county archives, had not been met. Matthew sat back, his mind racing. This was it. Not embezzlement, not some generic financial crime. This was Herbert cutting corners to save money, risking environmental contamination, violating federal EPA regulations. This was Herbert Rowland's entire legacy, built on his father's name and his own arrogance, balanced on a foundation of fraud. And Matthew Turner, architect and father, knew exactly how to make it collapse. The next morning, Matthew drove Emma to a child psychologist, Dr. Karen Curtis, whom Derek York had recommended. Emma needed trauma counseling, and Matthew needed professional documentation of the psychological impact of what Herbert and Margaret had done. "Will you stay with me?" Emma asked as they entered the office, her small hand gripping his tightly. "Every second," Matthew promised. While Emma drew pictures with Dr. Curtis, a gentle woman with gray hair and kind eyes, Matthew sat in the waiting room and made more calls. He reached out to Raoul Glenn, an environmental engineer he'd worked with on a commercial project 2 years ago. "Raoul, I need a favor. How would someone go about reporting potential EPA violations?" Raoul whistled low. "That's serious business, Matt. You're talking federal fines, potential criminal charges. What's going on?" Matthew explained, carefully, focusing only on the public records. "Send me what you have," Raoul said. "If there's really contamination and he's ignored remediation requirements, that's not just a fine. That's shutdown territory." How long would an investigation take? For EPA, once it's on their radar, they move fast. Inspections within days, usually. They don't mess around with environmental violations. Perfect. When Dr. Curtis emerged with Emma an hour later, her expression was grave. She asked to speak with Matthew privately. "Mr. Turner, Emma has experienced significant trauma. The abandonment, and that's what this was, medical neglect and abandonment, has severely impacted her sense of safety. She's having nightmares, anxiety attacks. She told me she's afraid you'll leave her too." Matthew's heart shattered. "I would never." "I know, and we'll work on that. But Matthew, you need to understand something. What Herbert and Margaret did wasn't just cruel. It was psychologically damaging in ways that will take months, maybe years to heal. I'm filing charges. Custody restrictions. Everything." Dr. Curtis nodded. "Good. And I'll provide whatever testimony or documentation you need. But there's something else." She hesitated. Emma mentioned that her grandmother has said things before. About Emma faking her condition. About her being lazy. This wasn't an isolated incident, Matthew. This was a pattern. Ice flooded Matthew's veins. "What else did she say?" "She said Grandma Margaret used to make her try to stand, even when it hurt. That Grandpa Herbert would tell her she was disappointing them. That if she really loved them, she'd try harder." The folder in Matthew's hands crumpled. "How long?" "She thinks since Candace left. 6 months. 6 months of his daughter being emotionally abused while he worked late, trusting that her grandparents loved her. 6 months of Herbert and Margaret's twisted ideology poisoning Emma's mind. He'd been so focused on giving Emma stability during the separation, on maintaining routine, that he'd missed the signs. Never again." That afternoon, while Emma napped, Matthew sent his compiled evidence to Raoul Glenn. Environmental inspection reports, permit violations, the settlement agreement, and the follow-up inspection showing non-compliance. All public record, all legally obtained. Raoul called back within an hour. "Matt, this is bad. Like, really bad. If the EPA sees this, send it to them. You understand what this means? Roland Industrial could be shut down. Fines in the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. Criminal charges for Herbert personally. He told my 5-year-old daughter to crawl home because he sold her wheelchair. Then he came to my house and threatened to take her from me. I understand exactly what this means." A long pause. "Consider it done." Matthew's phone rang immediately after. "Candace." He answered this time. "Matthew, what the hell is going on?" Her voice was frantic. "Mom is hysterical. Dad is threatening lawyers. And now you filed some kind of restraining order? Supervised visitation only. And yes, over a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding, Candace. Your parents sold Emma's wheelchair, told her to walk or crawl home, and she dragged herself 3 blocks. She needed stitches." Silence. "I sent you photos," Matthew continued, his voice flat. "Did you look at them?" Yes. But Mom said." "Mom said what? That Emma exaggerated? That she's faking?" "She said Emma was being dramatic. That you've always coddled her. Emma has spinal muscular atrophy. She physically cannot walk. Your mother, the supposed medical professional, knows this. And she sold Emma's chair anyway. Maybe they just needed the money. They sold an $8,000 wheelchair for $50 on Craigslist, Candace. This wasn't about money. This was about control. You're being paranoid. They threatened to file for custody. Herbert told me to my face. That stopped her. What? Yesterday. He showed up at my house, called me a deadbeat, said they were going to take Emma because I don't deserve her. He wouldn't. He did. I have neighbors who heard him. I have documentation. And I have 6 months of Emma telling a child psychologist about how your mother emotionally abused her, telling her she's faking, making her try to stand even when it hurt. Candace's breath hitched. That's not. Mom wouldn't. She did. And you weren't here to see it. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is that I trusted your parents with our daughter, and they betrayed that trust in the worst way possible. What's not fair is that Emma is traumatized and scared and hurt. What's not fair is that you're in Seattle defending the people who hurt our child. They're my parents. And Emma is your daughter. The line went silent except for Candace's ragged breathing. I'm coming home, she finally said. Good. Emma needs you. But Candace? Matthew's voice hardened. If you choose their side on this, if you try to minimize what they did, we're done. Not separated, divorced. Matthew, I mean it. Emma comes first. Not your parents' pride, not their reputation, not our marriage. Emma, he hung up before she could respond. The pieces were moving now. A controlled demolition of everything Herbert and Margaret Rowland had built. But Matthew wasn't satisfied. Not yet. He opened a new browser window and began researching Margaret's nursing career. She'd retired 5 years ago from Memorial Hospital, where she'd worked in pediatrics for 3 decades. Retired, not quit. The distinction mattered. He called the hospital's HR department, claiming to be verifying employment for a reference check. The woman on the other end was helpful, perhaps too helpful. Margaret Phelps? Oh, yes, she retired in 2020. Lovely woman. Though there was that incident at the end. Matthew's pulse quickened. Incident? I probably shouldn't say. But it's in her file, so it's not exactly secret. There was a complaint from a parent about her treatment of a disabled child, forcing physical therapy beyond what was prescribed. The parent claimed it was abusive. What happened? The hospital settled quietly. Mrs. Phelps agreed to retire rather than face an investigation. Matthew closed his eyes. Thank you. There it was. The pattern. The history. Margaret Phelps had been forced out of pediatric nursing for abusing a disabled child, and no one had thought to mention this when she volunteered to watch Emma. Or maybe someone had, and Candace had ignored it. He added this to his file, along with a request to Derek York to subpoena Margaret's employment records and the settlement details. By the time Emma woke from her nap, Matthew had built a case so comprehensive, so damning, that even the Rowlands' best lawyers would struggle to defend against it. But he wasn't done. Because this wasn't just about winning in court. This was about ensuring that Herbert and Margaret Rowland never had the power to hurt another child again. That night, after tucking Emma into bed and reading her 3 stories instead of the usual one, Matthew sat at his computer and drafted one final document. A detailed timeline of events, supported by medical records, photos, witness statements, and psychological evaluations. A companion piece to the EPA complaint, the CPS report, and the custody motion. This one would go to the media. Not immediately. That would be his fail-safe. His nuclear option if Herbert and Margaret tried to fight dirty. But it would be ready. Matthew Turner had spent 12 years building structures designed to last. Now he would spend every resource he had ensuring that Herbert and Margaret Rowland's house of cards collapsed completely. And when it did, he'd make sure they understood exactly why. For Emma, the EPA showed up at Rowland Industrial Solutions on a Tuesday morning, 3 black SUVs and a team of investigators with federal badges. Matthew watched from his car parked across the street. Emma's safe with Mrs. Kelly for the afternoon. He told Raoul not to mention his name. The complaint had been filed anonymously, as was allowed for environmental violations. Just a concerned citizen reporting potential contamination. The investigators spent 6 hours on site. They emerged with sealed containers of soil samples, water samples, and boxes of documents. Herbert Rowland stood in the parking lot. his face the color of old concrete, screaming into his phone. Matthew drove home satisfied. The first domino had fallen. The second fell that evening. When two police officers arrived at the Rowland mansion to serve Herbert and Margaret with formal complaints from Child Protective Services, Matthew knew because Mrs. Kelly called him, her voice breathless with vindication. "Matthew, there are police cars at the Rowlands' house. Two of them." "I know," Matthew said quietly. The third domino was the court order, delivered Wednesday morning, restricting all contact between Herbert, Margaret, and Emma to supervised visits only, pending a full hearing. Candace called within minutes. "How could you do this?" She was crying. "They're my parents. They abused our daughter. They made a mistake. They've been making mistakes for 6 months, Candace. Every time they told Emma she was faking. Every time they made her try to stand when it hurt. Every time they convinced her that her disability was a choice. You don't understand what this is doing to them. Dad's business is being shut down by the EPA. They're facing criminal charges." "Good. Matthew. He violated environmental regulations. Candace. He put profit over safety, and now he's facing consequences. That has nothing to do with me. Don't lie to me. This is all happening at once. The EPA, CPS, the court order. You did this. I filed a complaint with CPS, yes. I filed for supervised visitation, yes. The EPA investigation has nothing to do with me." It was technically true. He hadn't filed the EPA complaint. Raoul had. "I don't believe you. Believe what you want. But Candace, you need to make a choice. Are you coming home for Emma or for them? I can't just abandon my parents. They abandoned our daughter on a sidewalk." Candace sobbed. "This isn't fair. You're destroying them. They destroyed themselves. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it." She hung up. Matthew deleted her number from his recent calls and went to check on Emma, who was sitting in her new wheelchair watching cartoons, her bandaged hands holding a juice box. "Daddy, is Mommy coming home?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Will Grandma and Grandpa come back?" "Not for a long time. Maybe never." Emma looked up at him, her dark eyes so much older than 5 years should allow. "Good." Matthew's heart broke and healed simultaneously. Thursday brought the preliminary EPA findings. Soil contamination levels exceeding federal limits by 3 times. Groundwater contamination affecting the surrounding area. Evidence of deliberate disposal of hazardous waste in violation of the settlement agreement. Rowland Industrial Solutions was immediately shut down, pending full remediation. Estimated cost, $2.3 million. Herbert's personal assets would be frozen to cover potential fines and cleanup costs. Friday afternoon, Matthew received a call from Derek York. "Matt, the Rowlands are fighting back. They've hired Gilberto Riggs, one of the best defense attorneys in the state. He's claiming harassment, that you orchestrated all of this, that the EPA complaint is retaliation. Can they prove it?" "No. But Riggs is good. He's going to make this ugly in court. Let him. There's more. Margaret filed a countercomplaint with CPS, claiming you've been coaching Emma, that you're using her as a weapon in the divorce." Matthew laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Of course she did. We have the medical records. We have Dr. Curtis's evaluation. We have Mrs. Kelly's testimony. We're solid, Matt. But this is going to be brutal." "I know." Saturday morning. The hearing for supervised visitation was held in family court. Matthew sat beside Derek York, a folder of evidence on the table before them. Across the aisle, Herbert and Margaret sat with Gilberto Riggs, their faces masks of barely controlled fury. The judge, a stern woman named Honor Amanda Reeves, reviewed the case file for 10 minutes before looking up. "Mr. Riggs, your clients stand accused of medical neglect and child endangerment. The evidence presented by Mr. Turner is substantial. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor. This is a clear case of parental alienation. Mr. Turner has poisoned his daughter against her grandparents following a difficult separation from his wife. The alleged incident with the wheelchair was a misunderstanding, exacerbated by Mr. Turner's coaching of the child." Judge Reeves looked at the photos of Emma's injuries. "Explain these." "Children fall, Your Honor. Emma is a disabled child who is attempting to walk. She has spinal muscular atrophy. She cannot walk. The grandparents, in their medical judgment, Margaret Phelps was asked to retire from her nursing position following a complaint of abuse of a disabled child. Her medical judgment is questionable at best. Riggs's jaw tightened. That settlement was confidential. It was disclosed in discovery, Mr. Riggs. I've reviewed it. Judge Reeves turned to Matthew. Mr. Turner, walk me through what happened. Matthew did, calmly and precisely. He presented Dr. Chin's medical report, Dr. Curtis's psychological evaluation, Mrs. Kelly's written statement, and photos. He noted the timeline, the threats Herbert had made, Margaret's dismissive phone call. When he finished, Judge Reeves looked at the Rowlands. You sold a disabled child's wheelchair for $50 and told her to walk home. Herbert stood. Your Honor, we did not. Sit down, Mr. Rowland. The judge's voice could have frozen fire. This isn't a criminal trial, and you're not the defendant here. But based on the evidence presented, I'm granting the motion for supervised visitation only. All contact between Emma Turner and her grandparents will be supervised by a court-appointed guardian at a neutral location for a period of no less than 6 months. Your Honor, Riggs stood. This is excessive. What's excessive, Mr. Riggs? Is a 5-year-old child dragging herself 3 blocks with open wounds because her grandparents abandoned her. We're done here. The gavel fell. Herbert and Margaret's faces went from red to white. As Matthew gathered his papers, Herbert caught his eye across the courtroom. The hatred there was pure and absolute. Matthew smiled. Outside, Derek clapped him on the shoulder. Phase 1 complete. The CPS investigation will take longer, but we've established the pattern. You did good, Matt. It's not enough. What do you mean? Matthew looked at the courthouse, then at the folders still in his hand. They threatened to take Emma from me. They hurt her, traumatized her, and their only regret is getting caught. I want them to lose everything, Derek. Everything. The EPA investigation might do that. If the fines are as high as projected, not might, will. And not just the business. I want their house, their savings, their reputation. All of it. Derek studied him for a long moment. You're not just protecting Emma anymore. This is revenge. This is justice. There's a difference, Matt. Not to me. Not after what they did. That night, Matthew uploaded his compiled evidence, every document, every photo, every statement to a secure cloud server. Then he drafted an email to Sherry Harrington, an investigative journalist he'd met at a charity event 2 years ago. The email sat in his drafts folder. Not yet, but soon. Sunday, Candace came home. She arrived at noon, her rental car pulling into the driveway with a hesitant slowness that told Matthew everything he needed to know. She'd chosen her parents. Emma was at physical therapy, giving them space to talk. Candace looked exhausted, her usually perfect hair pulled into a messy ponytail, her eyes red from crying. Matthew, Candace. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd shared thousands of meals, made plans, argued about Emma's treatment, and slowly fallen out of love. I saw the court order, she said. Supervised visitation only. Yes. They're devastated. Emma needed stitches. Candace flinched. I know. I'm not saying what they did was right. But Matthew, destroying their business? The EPA investigation? That's too far. I didn't destroy their business. They did? When they violated environmental regulations. You reported them. Someone did. Anonymously. Don't insult my intelligence. Matthew leaned back. Fine. You want honesty? Yes, I made sure the right people knew about the violations. Your father was dumping hazardous waste to save money, contaminating groundwater that supplies 3 neighborhoods. He deserved to be reported. He's going to lose everything. He should. He risked people's health for profit. And more importantly, Candace, he hurt our daughter and felt no remorse. None. He came to my house and threatened to take her from me. He was angry. He was cruel. And your mother was worse, because she used her nursing background to justify it. They made Emma believe her disability was her fault. Candace's hands trembled. I didn't know about the things they said to her. Mom never told me. Would you have believed her if Emma told you? Silence. That's what I thought, Matthew said. What do you want from me? Candace's voice broke. You want me to cut off my parents completely? I want you to choose Emma. Just once. Put our daughter first. I do put her first. You're here defending the people who sold her wheelchair. Candace stood abruptly, pacing. They're my parents, Matthew. They raised me, loved me, sacrificed for me. I can't just throw them away because they made a mistake. This wasn't a mistake. This was cruelty. You're being extreme. Emma was bleeding on the sidewalk. Candace. She crawled half a mile. Those are facts, not extremes. Candace turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. I can't do this. I can't choose between my daughter and my parents. Then you've already chosen. The words hung in the air between them. I want a divorce, Candace whispered. Matthew had known it was coming, but the words still hit like a physical blow. Okay. I want joint custody. 50-50. No. You can't keep her from me. I can, and I will, if you're going to expose her to your parents. Supervised visitation or nothing, Candace. Not negotiable. You bastard. I'm the bastard who was there when Emma needed me. Where were you? Candace grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, and I'm fighting for custody. Good luck. The court just ruled that your parents aren't safe to be around Emma. You think they'll give you 50-50 when you're defending them? She slammed the door on her way out. Matthew sat in the empty kitchen for a long time, listening to the silence. Then he opened his laptop and sent the email to Sherry Harrington. The article ran in the Tuesday edition of the city's largest newspaper, front page, above the fold. Prominent local family under investigation for child abuse and environmental crimes. Sherry had done her homework. Every detail Matthew had provided was corroborated, sourced, legally airtight. The story of Emma's wheelchair, Herbert's EPA violations, Margaret's forced retirement from nursing, the court order for supervised visitation. By noon, the story had been picked up by state news. By evening, it was trending on social media. The Rowland name, respected for 3 generations, was destroyed in less than 12 hours. Matthew picked up Emma from school, her first day back since the incident, and found her smiling, surrounded by friends who'd made her welcome back cards. Everyone was so nice today, Daddy, she said as he helped her into the car. Mrs. Fuller said I was very brave. Tom Fuller's wife taught at Emma's school. Of course word had spread. You were brave, Emma. Some kids asked about my chair. I told them Grandma and Grandpa sold it, but that was okay, because you got me a better one. Matthew's throat tightened. Did that feel okay, talking about it? Dr. Curtis said it's good to tell the truth. The truth can't hurt me. Out of the mouths of babes. That evening, Derek called. Matt, have you seen the news? I might have. Riggs is threatening to sue you for defamation. And Herbert is claiming you leaked confidential EPA information. Everything in that article is public record or from Emma's medical files, which I have every right to share. He can try to sue. He won't win. He's also filed a countersuit. Harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation. Let him. We have the truth. Derek sighed. You're playing with fire, Matt. I'm cauterizing a wound. The countersuit was filed Wednesday morning. Matthew received the papers at work, read them during his lunch break, and laughed. Herbert was accusing him of orchestrating a conspiracy to destroy the Rowland family, of using Emma as a pawn, of manipulating the EPA investigation and the media coverage. All unprovable. All defensible. That afternoon, Matthew received a call from an unknown number. Mr. Turner? This is Special Agent Edwin Story with the FBI. I need to speak with you about the Rowland Industrial Solutions case. Matthew's blood ran cold. FBI. Am I under investigation? No, sir. But we believe there may be additional violations related to federal contracting fraud. I understand you've compiled significant documentation regarding the company's operations. I've compiled what's publicly available. Yes. Would you be willing to provide that to our investigators? Matthew smiled. Absolutely. The FBI investigation moved faster than the EPA's. Within a week, agents had seized Rowland Industrial Solutions financial records. Within 2, they'd uncovered a scheme where Herbert had been overbilling federal automotive contracts for parts, pocketing the difference. The fraud went back 7 years. Millions of dollars. Herbert Rowland was arrested on a Friday morning, led out of his house in handcuffs while news cameras rolled. Margaret stood on the porch, screaming at the agents, her face contorted with rage. Matthew watched the footage that evening with Emma asleep upstairs. He felt nothing. No satisfaction. No regret. Just a cold certainty that this was how it had to be. Candace called an hour later. "Are you happy now?" She sobbed. "Dad's in jail. Mom's had a breakdown. The house is going to be seized to cover the fines. Everything they built is gone. Emma's trauma is gone too," Matthew said quietly. "She's sleeping through the night now. Did you know she was having nightmares? Afraid I'd sell her wheelchair too?" Candace's crying intensified. "This is your fault. All of it." "No, Candace. This is their fault. They chose to sell Emma's chair. They chose to violate EPA regulations. They chose to commit federal fraud. All I did was make sure the right people knew about it. You destroyed them. They destroyed themselves. I just expedited the process. I'll never forgive you. I don't need your forgiveness. I need you to be a mother to Emma. Can you do that?" Silence. "That's what I thought," Matthew said, and hung up. The divorce proceedings began the following Monday. Candace was fighting for joint custody, claiming Matthew had manipulated Emma and destroyed her family out of spite. Derek presented the evidence. Dr. Curtis's evaluations showing Emma's improvement away from her grandparents. The medical records documenting the abuse. Candace's text messages defending Herbert and Margaret even after seeing photos of Emma's injuries. The judge granted Matthew primary custody, with Candace receiving supervised visitation every other weekend. Candace left the courthouse without looking at him. That night, Matthew made Emma's favorite dinner mac and cheese with hot dog pieces cut into stars, and they ate together at the kitchen table. "Mommy's not coming back, is she?" Emma asked. Matthew wanted to lie, to protect her, but Dr. Curtis had been clear. Truth. Always. "Not for a while, sweetheart. Mommy's very sad right now. Because of Grandma and Grandpa." "Yes." Emma was quiet for a moment, pushing her macaroni around. "It's not your fault, Daddy. You protected me." 7 years old. 7, and already wise beyond her years. "I'll always protect you, Emma. Always." She smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Matthew had ever seen. Herbert Rowland's trial began 6 months later. Matthew attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Emma beside him during the parts that weren't too graphic. The prosecution presented evidence of years of fraud, environmental violations, and willful endangerment. The defense argued that Herbert was a businessman who'd made mistakes, not a criminal. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. 15 years in federal prison, $4.7 million in fines and restitution. Forfeiture of all assets, including the Rowland family mansion. Margaret Phelps avoided jail time, but was sentenced to 5 years probation and community service. Her nursing license was permanently revoked. The house sold at auction. A developer bought it, planning to tear it down and build condos. 3 generations of Rowland legacy erased. Matthew felt no triumph. Only a quiet satisfaction that Emma would never have to fear them again. Candace didn't attend the sentencing. She'd moved back to Seattle permanently, taking a job with a tech company and relinquishing all claims to custody. She sent child support checks monthly, never with a note. Emma stopped asking about her mother after a while. A year after the incident, Matthew stood in his backyard, watching Emma race her new wheelchair around the garden path. She'd grown stronger, more confident. Dr. Curtis said the trauma was healing, slowly but surely. Mrs. Kelly brought over cookies, as she did every Sunday. "You did right by that girl," she said, watching Emma laugh. "I did what I had to." Herbert's appeal was denied yesterday. Did you see? Matthew had. He'd stopped following the case months ago, but Derek still sent updates. Good. And Margaret's working at a soup kitchen now, part of her community service. Someone said she looks 20 years older. Matthew said nothing. "You know," Mrs. Kelly continued, "some folks think you went too far. That you could have just gotten the custody order and let it be. Those folks didn't see Emma bleeding on the sidewalk." "No, they didn't." Mrs. Kelly squeezed his shoulder. "I saw her, and I saw what you did to make sure she was safe. You're a good father, Matthew Turner." Emma called out, "Daddy, come push me." Matthew smiled. "Coming, sweetheart." As he crossed the lawn, the evening sun casting long shadows, Matthew thought about the man he'd been a year ago, an architect who built structures meant to last. He was still that man, but now he'd built something even more important. A safe, happy life for his daughter, constructed on the rubble of those who'd tried to hurt her. And that structure would stand forever. 2 years after the incident, Matthew received a letter. It came from Herbert Rowland, forwarded through the federal prison system to Derek York, who called before passing it along. "Matt, Herbert sent you something. You don't have to read it." "What does it say?" "A lot of angry rambling. Blaming you for everything. Claiming he was set up. The usual denial." "Send it over." The letter arrived by courier that afternoon. Matthew read it once, methodically, his architect's eye noting every flaw in Herbert's logic, every desperate attempt to rewrite history. "You destroyed my family," Herbert had written. "You took everything from us because of one mistake. Emma would have been fine. You're a vindictive, cruel man who used his own daughter as a weapon. I hope you rot in hell." Matthew folded the letter carefully and placed it in a file box labeled Roland Case. Then he deleted it from his mind. That evening, he took Emma to her favorite restaurant to celebrate her 7th birthday. She wore a dress she'd picked out herself, purple with sparkles, and her wheelchair had streamers attached to the handles. "Make a wish," Matthew said as the waiter brought out a cake with 7 candles. Emma closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and blew them all out. "What did you wish for?" the waiter asked. Emma grinned. "Can't tell, or it won't come true." But she whispered it to Matthew later, as he tucked her into bed. "I wish that you'd always be my daddy." Matthew kissed her forehead. "That's one wish that's already true, sweetheart. No magic needed." As he turned off her light and closed the door, Matthew allowed himself a moment of reflection. Herbert was in prison. Margaret was broken. Candace was gone. The Rowland empire had crumbled to dust. And Emma was safe, happy, thriving. The architect in Matthew appreciated the symmetry. He demolished a corrupt structure and built something better in its place. The father in him simply felt peace. In the study, his phone buzzed with a message from Tom Fuller. "Drinks tomorrow? Heard you got promoted to senior partner." Matthew smiled. Life was moving forward. He replied, "Absolutely. First round's on me." Then he powered down his laptop, double-checked the locks on the doors, and went to bed. The battle was over. Emma had won. And Matthew Turner, the quiet architect who'd learned to fight for what mattered most, could finally rest. 5 years after the incident, Emma Turner turned 10 years old. She'd become a force of nature despite, or perhaps because of her wheelchair, serving on student council, winning art competitions, and making friends easily. Matthew had dated a few times, nothing serious, always careful to ensure Emma felt secure and prioritized. His career had flourished, the promotion to senior partner opening doors to bigger projects and international clients. But his best work, he knew, wasn't in the buildings he designed. It was in the girl who wheeled through his house singing off-key to her favorite songs. On Emma's 10th birthday, she asked for a party at the community center. 30 kids showed up, along with their parents, Mrs. Kelly, Dr. Curtis, and even Tom Fuller's family. As Matthew watched Emma laugh with her friends, he spotted a familiar face across the room. Candace. She'd aged in 5 years, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She stood uncertainly by the door, holding a wrapped present. Emma saw her too. For a moment, the laughter stopped. Then, Emma wheeled over. Matthew tensed, ready to intervene, but Emma's voice was calm. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, baby. Happy birthday." Candace knelt down, tears already forming. "I'm so sorry I've been gone." "I know. Can we talk? Later?" Emma looked back at Matthew. He nodded. "Just once." "Okay," Emma said. "But you can't stay long. I have cake to eat." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a door opening. Just a crack. Later, after the party, after the guests had left and Emma was sorting her presents, Candace approached Matthew. "Thank you for letting me come. Emma wanted you here. She's so grown up, so strong. She had to be." Candace flinched. "I know what I did, Matthew. Choosing them over her. Over you. I've had 5 years to think about it. And I was wrong. About everything. I let my parents poison me against you, against the truth. I let my need to believe they were good people blind me to what they really were." Matthew said nothing. "Herbert wrote to me from prison," Candace continued. "Angry, hateful letters blaming you for everything. I realized reading them that he learned nothing, felt no remorse. And I thought about Emma, about what he did to her, and I just broke." What do you want, Candace? To be part of her life again. Not custody, not even unsupervised visits. Just to be her mom, if she'll let me. Matthew studied her for a long moment. That's up to Emma. But if you hurt her again, I won't. I swear, Matthew. I won't. He didn't fully believe her. But he saw the desperation in her eyes, the genuine regret, and decided to give Emma the choice. Talk to Dr. Curtis. Work with her on rebuilding trust. We'll start with supervised visits and see how it goes. Candace nodded, tears streaming freely now. Thank you. Don't thank me. This is for Emma, not for you. She left quietly, and Matthew returned to the living room where Emma was examining a new art set. Is Mom coming back? She asked without looking up. Maybe, if you want her to. Emma was quiet for a minute. I think I do, but it's okay if she doesn't stay. Why's that? Because I have you. She looked up, smiling. And you're enough. Matthew's heart swelled. You're enough for me too, sweetheart. That night, after Emma was asleep, Matthew stood in his study looking at the file box labeled Roland Case. He hadn't opened it in 3 years. He carried it to the garage, placed it in the recycling bin, and walked back inside. Some structures, once demolished, didn't need to be remembered. Only the lessons learned from their collapse. Herbert Roland died in prison 7 years into his sentence. A heart attack, sudden and final. The news reached Matthew through a brief email from Derek York. He told Emma, who absorbed the information with a maturity that still surprised him. Are you sad? She asked. No, Matthew said honestly. Are you? Emma thought about it. I don't think so. I barely remember him. That's okay. Margaret Phelps lived another 10 years. Alone in a small apartment, her community service completed, her social circle reduced to nothing. She tried to reach out to Emma once, through a letter sent to Candace. Emma, now 15. Read it carefully. I'm sorry. Margaret had written. I was wrong about everything. I let my pride hurt you, and I can never take that back. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. Emma showed it to Matthew. What do you want to do? He asked. Nothing. Emma said. She's sorry now, but that doesn't fix what she did. And I don't need her apology to be okay. You're very wise. I have a good dad. She smiled. Dr. Curtis says I'm one of her success stories. You're my success story, Matthew said. Emma wheeled over and hugged him. We're each other's success stories. Margaret's obituary, when it came 2 years later, was brief. No mention of her nursing career, no mention of family, just dates and a funeral home. Candace attended. Emma did not. I don't owe her my grief, Emma explained. She wasn't my grandmother. Not in any way that mattered. Matthew agreed. Emma Turner graduated high school with honors at 18, her wheelchair decorated with flowers and pride flags. She'd been accepted to art school, full scholarship, with plans to become a graphic designer. Matthew sat in the audience, watching her cross the stage, her chair modified, with motorized controls she'd learned to use expertly, and felt pride so intense it was almost painful. Candace sat beside him, their relationship civil if not warm. She'd been consistent in Emma's life for 8 years now, never missing a birthday or important event, slowly rebuilding trust. Emma had forgiven her, mostly, though some wounds never fully healed. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos, Tom Fuller clapped Matthew on the back. You did good, Turner. Raised a hell of a kid. She raised herself, mostly. Bullshit. You gave her the foundation. Everything else was just building on that. Matthew smiled. I'm an architect. Foundations are my specialty. That night, Emma's graduation party filled their backyard. Friends, teachers, Dr. Curtis, Mrs. Kelly now in her 80s and still bringing cookies, and dozens of others who'd been part of Emma's journey. As the sun set, Emma found Matthew sitting alone on the porch. Hiding, she teased. Reflecting. She wheeled up beside him. About what? About the day I almost lost you. Emma was quiet. They didn't talk about the wheelchair incident often. The therapy had worked, the trauma healed, but the memory remained. You didn't lose me, she said finally. You saved me. I just did what any father would do. No. Emma's voice was firm. You did what a good father would do. A great father. You didn't just protect me from them. You protected me from ever being a victim again. Matthew felt tears prick his eyes. You were never a victim, Emma. You were always a fighter. Because you taught me how. She took his hand. Thank you, Dad. For everything. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the party continue without them. Dad? Emma said after a while. Yeah? Do you ever regret it? How far you went? What you did to them? Matthew considered the question seriously. No. I protected you. That's all that matters. Even though it destroyed them, they destroyed themselves. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Emma nodded. Good. Because I don't regret it either. I'm glad they're gone. Is that bad? No, sweetheart. That's survival. Emma squeezed his hand. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Emma. Always. As the stars came out and the party wound down, Matthew Turner reflected on the architect he'd been 23 years ago, young and idealistic, building structures meant to last. He'd built something that lasted, in the end. Not a building, not a business. A daughter who was strong, confident, and unbreakable. And that was the only legacy that mattered. Matthew Turner retired at 65, leaving a career of award-winning buildings and satisfied clients. Emma, now 29, had become a successful graphic designer with her own firm, specializing in accessibility consulting. She'd never married, focused instead on her career and advocacy work. She lived independently in a fully accessible apartment she'd designed herself, with modifications that made Matthew's architect heart proud. They had dinner every Sunday, a tradition unbroken in 24 years. On one such Sunday, as Matthew helped Emma with the dishes, she insisted, even though she had a perfectly good dishwasher, she brought up a name he hadn't heard in years. I got a letter from Uncle Derek. Did you know he's retiring too? Derek York, now in his 70s, had remained Matthew's lawyer and friend through everything. He mentioned it last month. Earned it, after dealing with the Rowland case. Emma laughed. He said that case made his career. Every lawyer in the state knows the story. Not the story I wanted to be known for. Why not? You protected your daughter and exposed criminals. That's pretty badass. Matthew smiled. Language. Emma. I'm 29. You're still my daughter. She rolled her eyes affectionately. Derek wants to write a book about it. He asked my permission. Matthew's hands stilled. What did you say? I said yes. But only if he tells the truth. All of it. What they did, what you did, how it ended. People will judge. Let them. I'm proud of what you did. And I think other parents in similar situations need to know they can fight back. It was a specific situation, Emma. Most people can't just moan. Most people don't have your mind, your strategic thinking, your absolute refusal to accept injustice. Emma turned her chair to face him fully. But they can learn from it. How to document. How to build a case. How to be relentless. Matthew sat down across from her. You've thought about this. I have. Because every day I work with families struggling with accessibility, with discrimination, with people who see disability as an inconvenience. And I think about what you did, and I realize you gave me a blueprint. A blueprint? For fighting back. For refusing to be diminished. For protecting what matters. Matthew felt his throat tighten. I just protected you. You did more than that. You showed me I was worth protecting. Worth fighting for. Worth everything. They sat in silence for a moment. Tell Derek yes, Matthew finally said. On one condition. What's that? The proceeds go to disability advocacy organizations. I don't want to profit from what happened to you. Emma smiled. Already suggested it. He agreed. Of course she had. His brilliant, capable daughter. Always 3 steps ahead. Just like her father. The book. The Turner Case. A Father's Fight for Justice. Published 2 years later, became a bestseller in legal circles. It detailed every step of Matthew's methodical destruction of the Rowland Empire, from the initial documentation to the final FBI investigation. Critics called it either a blueprint for justified revenge or a cautionary tale about going too far. Matthew didn't care which. What mattered was the letters. Hundreds of them, from parents who'd read the book and found hope, from disability advocates who used it in training, from lawyers who cited it in cases involving child abuse and medical neglect. Emma framed one letter and hung it in her office. It was from a mother who'd used Matthew's documentation strategy to protect her autistic son from abusive grandparents. Your father showed me I didn't have to accept cruelty as normal. The mother had written to Emma. He showed me I could fight back. My son is safe now because of the example Matthew Turner set. Emma showed the letter to Matthew during one of their Sunday dinners. See? She said, you did more than protect me. You protected a lot of kids. Matthew read the letter twice, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Not just peace. Not just pride. Vindication. What he'd done, the systematic dismantling of two people who'd hurt his child, had been right. Not just legally defensible. Not just morally justifiable. Right, Dad? Emma's voice brought him back. You okay? Yeah, he smiled. Yeah, I'm okay. Good. Because I have news. What news? Emma grinned, a spark of mischief in her eyes that reminded him of her childhood. I'm starting a foundation. The Emma Turner Accessibility Foundation. We're going to help families navigate the legal system when their disabled kids face abuse or discrimination. Matthew's heart swelled. Emma, I want you on the board. You and Derek and Dr. Curtis. We're going to turn your blueprint into a resource. Legal guides, documentation templates, lawyer referrals, everything you did to protect me, but systematized for others. That's incredible. It's necessary. And it's the right use of our story. She wheeled closer, taking his hand. You turned your rage into protection. I'm turning my survival into prevention. Matthew pulled her into a hug. This brilliant woman who'd grown from a frightened 5-year-old into a force for change. I'm so proud of you, he whispered. I learned from the best, she whispered back. Matthew Turner died peacefully in his sleep at 82. Emma found him in the morning, sitting in his favorite chair in the study. A sketch of a building he'd designed 50 years ago on his lap. The funeral was held on a sunny Saturday, attended by hundreds. Architects and designers, lawyers and advocates, families who'd been helped by the Emma Turner Accessibility Foundation, and old friends like Mrs. Kelly's grandchildren, Mrs. Kelly herself, having passed 5 years prior. Emma, now 46 and the director of a foundation that had helped thousands, gave the eulogy. My father, she began, her voice steady despite her tears, was a man who built things meant to last. Buildings, yes, but more importantly, foundations. Foundations of safety, of justice, of unshakable love. When I was 5 years old, someone hurt me, someone I was supposed to trust. And my father didn't just comfort me. He didn't just protect me. He systematically, methodically, and legally destroyed every structure they built on cruelty and pride. Some people said he went too far. That revenge isn't justice. But I'm here to tell you, what my father did wasn't revenge. It was engineering. He identified the weak points in a corrupt structure and applied precise pressure until it collapsed. And in its place, he built something stronger. He built me. Not just my confidence, though he did that. Not just my sense of safety, though he did that too. He built my understanding that we don't have to accept cruelty as inevitable. That we can fight back, intelligently and relentlessly. That we can win. The foundation that bears my name exists because my father showed me how to turn pain into purpose, how to document injustice and dismantle it, how to protect others the way he protected me. He was the best father a daughter could ask for, the best man I've ever known, and the best architect, not of buildings, but of a better world. She paused, looking at the casket covered in flowers. Rest easy, Dad. Your work is done, and it will last forever. The foundation did last. Long after Emma herself retired, long after the last person who'd known Matthew personally had passed, the Emma Turner Accessibility Foundation continued to help families fight back against abuse and discrimination. And in every training manual, every legal guide, every resource they provided, there was a dedication. In memory of Matthew Turner, who showed us that the best structures are built on love, protected with intelligence, and defended with absolute resolve. The Roland name faded entirely from memory, their empire reduced to a cautionary tale in business ethics courses. But the Turner name, Matthew's legacy, lived on in every child protected, every abuser held accountable, every parent who learned to fight back. Because some structures, once built right, truly do last forever. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Foundations. Dominic Hawthorne wiped sweat from his brow as he hammered the final nail into the custom bookshelf he'd built for his son's bedroom. At 42, his calloused hands told the story of a man who had built his life from nothing, literally. 20 years ago, he'd been a construction worker with ambition but little else. Now he owned Hawthorne Construction, one of the most respected custom home builders in the Pacific Northwest. "That looks amazing, Daddy," Tommy exclaimed, running his small hands over the smooth oak surface. "Only the best for you, buddy," Dominic replied, ruffling his 8-year-old son's dark hair, the same shade as his own. "You've got your mother's eyes, but thank God you got my handyman genes." Tommy giggled and began arranging his books on the shelves. Dominic watched him, a tightness forming in his chest. Something was off in his home, and it had been for months. His wife, Olivia, was distant, constantly checking her phone and working late at her interior design firm. The business had taken off after she'd landed several contracts designing high-end apartments for Meridian Properties, a development company run by Alastair Pierce. Dominic had met Pierce exactly twice. The first time at a charity gala where Olivia had introduced them, and Pierce had barely acknowledged Dominic's existence, his eyes lingering too long on Olivia's low-cut dress. The second time was 3 months ago, when Dominic had surprised Olivia at her office with lunch and found Pierce leaning too close to her at her desk, both of them laughing at something on her computer screen. Something in Pierce's smile made Dominic's skin crawl. "Daddy, can we have pizza for dinner?" Tommy asked, breaking into his thoughts. "Sure, buddy. Let's go ask your mom." Dominic found Olivia in their bedroom, applying makeup even though it was nearly 7 p.m. on a Wednesday. "Tommy wants pizza for dinner," he said from the doorway. Olivia startled slightly, her hand jerking and smudging her eyeliner. "Jesus, Dom, you scared me. Sorry. Didn't realize applying war paint required such concentration." She shot him an irritated look. "I told you this morning, I have a client meeting tonight. At 7 p.m.? "Yes, at 7 p.m. Alastair's investors are in town, and he wants me to walk them through the design concept for the new lakeside development." Dominic leaned against the doorframe. "Alastair, huh? First name basis with the boss now." "Don't start, Dom." She blotted her lipstick. "This is a huge opportunity. The lakeside project could double my firm's revenue. And Alastair couldn't schedule this meeting during business hours. His investors are only in town tonight." She stood, smoothing down her form-fitting black dress. "I won't be late. Probably home by 10. Dominic watched as she gathered her portfolio and phone. Tommy's looking forward to pizza with both his parents. Guilt flashed across her face, but was quickly replaced by determination. "We'll have family dinner tomorrow. I promise." After she left, Dominic ordered pizza and ate with Tommy, helping with homework and tucking him into bed. Then he sat alone in his home office, nursing a whiskey and staring at the motion-activated security app on his phone. He'd installed the system himself after a break-in at a neighbor's house. The cameras covered every entrance to their property, including the driveway. At 10:30 p.m., his phone buzzed with an alert. A car was pulling into their driveway, a sleek black Audi he recognized as Alastair Pierce's. Dominic watched the grainy night vision footage as Pierce and Olivia sat in the car for 7 minutes. There was no mistaking their silhouettes moving closer together, their heads joining in what could only be a kiss. Dominic didn't slam his fist into the wall. He didn't throw his glass across the room. Instead, he took a screenshot, sent it to his private email, and poured another finger of whiskey. His father had taught him that a man never loses his temper. He channels his rage into action. By midnight, Olivia still hadn't returned. Dominic went to bed, lying awake until 1:23 a.m. when he heard her key in the door. She slipped into bed 30 minutes later, smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't his. Dominic closed his eyes, his mind already calculating. Alastair Pierce had just made the worst mistake of his life. And Olivia would soon learn that betraying Dominic Hawthorne wasn't just breaking a vow. It was declaring war. Chapter 2. Discoveries. For 6 weeks, Dominic continued as if nothing had changed. He built shelves, attended Tommy's soccer games, and kissed Olivia goodbye each morning. But every night, he gathered evidence. Screenshots from the security cameras, GPS location from the family iPad that Olivia sometimes forgot was linked to her phone, and carefully documented timelines of her late meetings and weekend design emergencies. It was Tommy who unwittingly provided the final piece of the puzzle. "Dad, can you help me with my social studies project?" he asked one Saturday morning while Olivia was supposedly at a design conference in Portland. "Sure, buddy. What's the topic?" "We're making family trees. I need pictures of everyone." Dominic helped Tommy gather photos from their family albums and digital archives. As Tommy sorted through images on Dominic's laptop, he clicked on a folder labeled Property Photos. "Is this our house being built?" Tommy asked, pointing to construction images. "That's right. I took pictures of every stage." Tommy scrolled through photos of foundation pouring, framing, and roofing. Then he stopped on an image of Dominic standing with his original business partner, Floyd Callahan. "Who's that, Dad?" Dominic felt a familiar pang at the sight of Floyd, the man who'd helped him start Hawthorne Construction, only to abruptly sell his stake in the company 3 years ago after a mysterious financial windfall. "That's Floyd. He used to work with me. He looks like Mr. Pierce." Dominic froze. "What did you say?" "He looks like Mr. Pierce. Mom's friend who gave me that cool drone for my birthday last month." Dominic kept his voice casual. "You've met Mr. Pierce?" Tommy nodded. "He came to the house once when you were in Chicago. Mom said it was for work, but they were just laughing and drinking wine." Dominic's mind raced. Floyd and Pierce, both tall with salt and pepper hair, both with connections to Olivia. It couldn't be coincidence. "Tommy, let's take a break. I need to check something for work." While Tommy played video games, Dominic dove into research. It took just 30 minutes to discover that Meridian Properties, Pierce's company, had purchased 3 parcels of land in the last 3 years that Hawthorne Construction had been poised to develop. Each time, they'd been outbid at the last minute by an anonymous buyer that turned out to be Meridian. And each time, Floyd had been involved in the preliminary site assessments. The pieces clicked into place. Floyd had been feeding inside information to Pierce, who was using Olivia to get it. The affair wasn't just personal betrayal. It was industrial espionage. Dominic called his attorney, Russell Davidson. "Russ, I need you to quietly pull all documents related to Floyd's departure. And I need to know if Meridian Properties has any financial connection to him." 2 days later, Russell confirmed what Dominic had suspected. Floyd had received a consulting fee of $250,000 from shell company owned by Meridian Properties right before selling his stake in Hawthorne Construction. That night, Dominic sat across from Olivia at dinner, watching her push food around her plate while checking her phone under the table. "You seem distracted," he commented. "Just stressed about work." She didn't meet his eyes. "Anything I can help with?" She shook her head. "It's complicated. Design stuff. Alistair, keeping you busy?" Her eyes flicked up at the mention of Pierce's name. "The whole team is swamped with the Lakeside project." "Funny thing," Dominic said casually, "I almost bid on that Lakeside property last year. Beautiful location. Someone outbid us at the last minute." Olivia's fork clattered against her plate. "Really? You never mentioned that." "Didn't seem important at the time." He smiled and took a sip of water. "How's Alistair's wife, by the way?" "Gwen, right? I heard she's on some charity board with Senator Walsh's wife." Olivia paled slightly. "I wouldn't know. We don't discuss personal matters." Dominic nodded, filing away her reaction. "Of course not. Strictly professional." Later that night, he made a call to an old friend from his construction days who now worked for the city planning department. By morning, he had digital copies of all permit applications for the Lakeside development. By afternoon, he discovered 3 critical code violations in Meridian's plans that had somehow been overlooked by inspectors. Dominic wasn't just gathering ammunition. He was building the foundation for a demolition so complete that when it was over, no one would even remember there had once been something standing in its place. Chapter 3. Strategy. Dominic stared at the chessboard on his desk, his fingers hovering over a knight. Across from him sat Howard Bellamy, his oldest friend and the only person besides his lawyer who knew what Olivia had done. "You're thinking too hard," Howard said. "Sometimes the simplest move is the best." "Simple moves are predictable," Dominic replied, finally moving his bishop instead. "And I can't afford to be predictable right now." Howard leaned back in his chair, studying the board. "Have you considered just confronting her? Divorce her, take half, move on with your life? This isn't about money. It's always about money, Dom." "No." Dominic's voice hardened. "It's about respect. About consequences. Pierce didn't just take my wife. He and Floyd systematically undercut my business, using Olivia as their spy. They need to understand what happens when you betray Dominic Hawthorne." Howard moved his queen. "Check." Dominic blocked with a pawn without hesitation. "I'm not just going to divorce Olivia. I'm going to dismantle everything she and Pierce thought they were building." "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" "Pierce has connections. His brother-in-law is Deputy Mayor Nelson, which is precisely why he's been able to slide past building inspections and zoning regulations." Dominic reached for a folder and handed Howard several documents. "But not everything can be hidden with a well-placed bribe." Howard reviewed the papers, his eyes widening. "These geological surveys. The lakeside property has significant soil stability issues that Pierce's team deliberately concealed when they submitted their permit applications. They're building a 50-unit luxury development on land that could experience liquefaction in an earthquake. Jesus, that's not just unethical, it's criminal." "Exactly." Dominic took Howard's knight. "And that's just the beginning." Over the next hour, Dominic outlined his plan. First, he would continue gathering evidence of Meridian's permit violations and code shortcuts. Second, he would secure his finances, discreetly moving assets to protect them from the coming divorce. Third, he would leverage his connections to buy strategic properties surrounding the lakeside development, effectively controlling access to utilities and road improvements the project would need. "What about Olivia and Tommy?" Howard asked. "You're talking about destroying their future too." Dominic's expression darkened. "I've already arranged for Tommy's financial security. I've established a trust fund in his name that neither Olivia nor I can touch. As for Olivia," he moved his rook. "She made her choice when she decided to betray me with Pierce. She just didn't understand the consequences of that choice." "And what about Floyd, your old partner?" "Floyd will learn that loyalty isn't just a word you toss around at company barbecues." Dominic's smile didn't reach his eyes. "He sold out for $250,000. What he doesn't know is that the information he gave Pierce was incomplete. The structural plans for our major projects were modified after his departure. Any building using those specifications would have serious issues within 5 years." Howard looked troubled. "That's extreme, Dom." "No, it's justice. Pierce and Olivia didn't just have an affair. They systematically worked to undermine everything I've built. They used my son's mother as a weapon against me." Dominic moved his queen. Checkmate in 3 moves. Howard studied the board, then looked up at his friend with concern. "You've changed, Dom." "No." Dominic stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. "I've simply stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. My father built houses for 40 years. He taught me that the foundation determines whether a structure stands or falls. Pierce, Floyd, and Olivia built their plans on a foundation of betrayal. Now they'll watch it crumble." That night, after tucking Tommy into bed, Dominic found Olivia in their bedroom, packing an overnight bag. "Going somewhere?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Design retreat in Astoria for the weekend. I told you last week." She didn't meet his eyes. "No, you didn't." She paused, then continued packing. "I must have forgotten. It came up suddenly. Seems like a lot of things come up suddenly these days." She zipped the bag shut. "What's that supposed to mean?" Dominic smiled, the kind of smile that should have warned her. "Nothing. Enjoy Astoria. The weather's supposed to be beautiful. Almost as beautiful as the view from Pierce's beach house in Cannon Beach." Olivia froze, her knuckles whitening around the handle of her bag. "What are you talking about?" "Just making conversation. Tell Alistair I said hello." She stared at him, her face drained of color. "Dom." Don't worry, he said softly. Tommy and I will have a great weekend. I'm thinking of taking him fishing. Building memories, you know? The kind that last. For a moment, fear flickered in her eyes. Then she gathered herself. We should talk when I get back. Oh, we definitely will. Dominic stepped aside to let her pass. Have a wonderful weekend, Olivia. Make the most of it. As her car pulled out of the driveway, Dominic returned to his office and opened his laptop. The blinking dot on the GPS tracker he'd placed under her car confirmed she was heading toward the coast, not north to Astoria. He picked up his phone and dialed. Russell, it's time to move forward with the property acquisitions around Lakeside, and I need you to file those preliminary divorce papers on Monday. Yes, with the sealed evidence appendix. She'll be served when she returns from her weekend getaway. Dominic ended the call and turned to the wall map, where he'd marked Pierce's properties and developments. One by one, he began placing red pins on strategic locations, the first visible markers of a plan that had been forming in his mind for months. The war had officially begun. Chapter 4. Execution. The following Monday, Dominic sat in his office reviewing blueprints when his phone rang. Olivia's name flashed on the screen. He let it go to voicemail. 3 minutes later, it rang again. And again. By the fourth call, he picked up. You had me served with divorce papers at my office? Her voice trembled with fury and shock. I thought your workplace was appropriate, considering it's where our marriage died. You can't do this. The allegations in these papers are all documented and verified, Dominic finished for her. The infidelity, the corporate espionage, the breach of fiduciary duty to our family businesses. Russell's team has been building the case for months. A long silence followed. When Olivia spoke again, her voice had changed from anger to calculation. What do you want, Dom? Money? The house? Name your price. Dominic laughed softly. That's the difference between us, Olivia. You think everything has a price. Some things can't be bought back. Is this about Alistair? It was a mistake. I can end it. Too late. He kept his voice even, emotionless. Check your email. I've attached the complete evidence package, including the reports proving you and Pierce used information from Floyd to undercut Hawthorne Construction on multiple projects. The same package is being delivered to the Ethics Committee of the Architectural Design Association this afternoon. I imagine your license will be under review by the end of the week. You would destroy my career? Her voice cracked. What about Tommy? Think about what this will do to him. I'm always thinking about Tommy. That's why I've arranged for full custody. Your visitation rights will depend on the court's assessment of your stability and judgment. You can't take my son. Actually, I can, and I will. The evidence of your using Tommy as cover for your meetings with Pierce is particularly disturbing. The text messages where you discuss how to manipulate our son's schedule to create alibis for your rendezvous won't play well before Judge Martinez. Another long silence. Then what about Pierce? Does he know? Pierce will learn his lesson separately, though I imagine his investors might be calling soon. Those structural issues with the Lakeside project are becoming common knowledge in certain circles. Dom, please. Her voice softened, attempting the conciliatory tone that had worked on him so many times before. We can talk about this. Work something out. We're past talking, Olivia. In fact, we're past everything except the consequences of your choices. He checked his watch. I have a meeting. Tommy will be staying with me at the lake house until the custody hearing. His things are already there. You have until Friday to remove your personal belongings from the house. Anything left will be donated. The lake house. Her voice rose. But that's mine. Always was. It's in my family trust, not our marital property. He allowed himself a small smile. You might want to check the ownership of your design firm's office building too. Russell completed that acquisition last month. He ended the call and turned to the window, watching the Seattle skyline as gray clouds gathered over Puget Sound. His phone immediately began buzzing with text messages from Olivia, alternating between threats and pleas. He blocked her number and continued reviewing the blueprints for his newest project, a community center being built on land directly adjacent to Pierce's lakeside development. By Wednesday, the ripples of Dominic's actions had become waves. The Architectural Design Association had suspended Olivia's license pending investigation. Two of Meridian Properties investors had pulled out of the Lakeside project after receiving anonymous packets containing geological surveys and structural assessments. And Floyd Callahan had been served with a civil suit alleging breach of contract and corporate espionage. On Thursday, Dominic received a call from an unfamiliar number. Hawthorne. He answered curtly. This is Alastair Pierce. The voice was tight with controlled rage. We need to talk. I don't believe we have anything to discuss. Listen, you vindictive bastard. I don't know what game you're playing, but it stops now, before we both end up destroying each other. Dominic leaned back in his chair. That's where you're wrong, Pierce. I'm not playing a game. And there's no both here. Only you, watching everything you've built turn to ash. Is this about Olivia? Fine. It's over. I've ended it. She meant nothing. Good to know. I'm sure she'll appreciate hearing that. Pierce's voice lowered. What do you want? Money? A partnership? Name it. What I want, Dominic said slowly, is for you to experience what it feels like when someone systematically dismantles your life's work. When everything you value is taken from you by someone you trusted. You're insane. No, I'm patient and thorough. Dominic checked his calendar. By the way, how's the meeting with the bank going today? I heard Lakeside's construction loan is under review. Pierce's breathing audibly quickened. How did you? I know everything, Alastair. Your shell companies. The bribes to building inspectors. The falsified environmental impact statements. The fact that your brother-in-law, Deputy Mayor Nelson, helped fast-track permits for projects that didn't meet code. You can't prove any of that. I already have. Check tomorrow's Seattle Times. Front page, above the fold. Developer's empire built on quicksand. Corruption in Seattle's building department exposed. The line went silent, except for Pierce's ragged breathing. One more thing, Dominic added. Tommy's birthday party is next Saturday. He's turning 9. The invitation sent to your house was a mistake. Please don't attend. Dominic hung up and swiveled his chair to face Howard, who had been sitting silently across the desk. Was that necessary? Howard asked, mentioning the boys' party. Everything I do is necessary. Dominic handed him a folder. These are the final documents for the property transfer. Once signed, the land surrounding Lakeside will be owned by Tommy's trust. Howard reviewed the papers. You're putting all of this in Tommy's name? The access roads, the utility corridors. Pierce will have to negotiate with my son's trustees to complete his development, or abandon the project entirely. And who are the trustees? Dominic smiled thinly. You and Russell, with explicit instructions never to approve any request from Meridian Properties or its subsidiaries. Howard shook his head. The level of detail in this revenge plan is disturbing, Dom. It's not revenge. It's justice. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, you're becoming as ruthless as the people who betrayed you. Dominic's expression hardened. The difference is I never drew first blood. I never betrayed a partner or broke a vow. Everything that happens now is simply the natural consequence of their actions. That evening, as Dominic helped Tommy with homework at the lake house, his phone rang with Russell's familiar number. It's done, Russell said without preamble. The Seattle Times is running the story tomorrow. The FBI has opened a preliminary investigation into Nelson and the building department. And Floyd Callahan has agreed to testify against Pierce in exchange for dropping our civil suit. Perfect. Dominic glanced at Tommy, happily drawing at the kitchen table. And the other matter? For Tommy's birthday. The paperwork is complete. The deed will be delivered as arranged. It's quite the gift, Dom. He deserves everything. Dominic's voice softened watching his son. After what they put him through, using him as a pawn in their game, he deserves to know his father would move mountains for him. After ending the call, Dominic joined Tommy at the table. How's the drawing coming, buddy? Good. It's our family tree for school. Tommy pushed the paper toward him. See? That's you and me at the top. Dominic noticed that Tommy had drawn only 2 figures at the top of the tree, with Olivia noticeably absent. Buddy, you know your mom loves you, right? Even with everything that's happening. Tommy's small face grew serious. Is Mom in trouble? I heard her crying on the phone with Mr. Pierce. Dominic chose his words carefully. Your mom made some choices that have consequences. But nothing changes how much we both love you. Is that why we're staying at the lake house? Because of Mom's choices? Partly. Dominic put his arm around Tommy's shoulders. But also because I thought we could use some father-son time before your birthday party. Tommy brightened. Is everyone still coming? Absolutely. And I have a special surprise planned. Dominic tapped the drawing. Maybe you should add a spot for your future. We want to build someday. As Tommy excitedly added to his drawing, Dominic gazed out at the lake, watching the last light fade from the sky. By this time next week, Pierce's reputation would be in tatters, Olivia's career would be effectively over, and Floyd would be testifying before a grand jury investigating corruption in the building department. And Tommy, innocent Tommy who had been used as an unwitting pawn in their schemes, would receive a birthday gift that would secure his future in ways Olivia and Pierce could never imagine. Chapter 5, Consequences. The Seattle Times headline was even more damning than Dominic had anticipated. Corruption exposed. Developers' empire linked to bribes, falsified permits. The front page story detailed how Meridian Properties had systematically bribed officials to overlook safety violations and bypass environmental regulations. Deputy Mayor Nelson had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation, and 3 building inspectors had been suspended. Dominic read the article twice over breakfast, then set it aside as Tommy came into the kitchen. Dad, can we go fishing today? Absolutely, buddy. Right after I make a quick call. In his office, Dominic dialed Russell's number. Have you heard from Pierce's attorneys? They're in full damage control mode, Russell replied. They've requested a meeting to discuss, and I quote, mutually beneficial resolutions to ongoing disputes. Decline the meeting. I have no interest in resolution. Dom, from a legal standpoint, it might be wise to at least hear what they're offering. What they're offering, Dominic said coldly, is desperation. Pierce is watching his empire crumble. His investors are fleeing. The banks have frozen his construction loans. His wife has filed for divorce after learning about Olivia. He's hoping to negotiate his way out of consequences. And you're not interested in negotiation? I'm interested in completion. The job isn't finished yet. After ending the call, Dominic took Tommy fishing. They spent the day on the lake, catching trout and talking about school, friends, and Tommy's upcoming birthday. For a few hours, Dominic allowed himself to forget about revenge and simply be a father. But that evening, reality intruded. As Tommy played video games, Dominic received a text from an unknown number. You've made your point. Let's talk. For Tommy's sake. Oh. Dominic blocked the number without responding. Then another text from a different number. This has gone far enough. You're destroying lives. Meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. The usual coffee shop. He blocked that number too, but the interruption had soured his mood. Tommy noticed his father's darkened expression. Is everything okay, Dad? Dominic forced a smile. Everything's fine, buddy. Just some work stuff. How about we make some popcorn and watch a movie? Later that night, after Tommy was asleep, Dominic sat on the deck overlooking the moonlit lake. His phone rang. Howard. Pierce showed up at my office today, Howard said without greeting. He looked desperate, Dom. Said he wanted to make amends. Offered to sign over his interest in the lakeside property to Tommy's trust. And what did you tell him? That any offers needed to go through your attorneys. But Dom, the man is on the edge. The FBI raided his offices this morning. His wife has filed for full custody of their children and a restraining order. Olivia has been calling him nonstop, blaming him for everything. Sounds like things are progressing exactly as planned. Howard's voice lowered. He mentioned something else. Said Olivia told him you had security footage of them together. That you'd known about the affair for months, but kept silent, gathering evidence. Is that a question? It's a concern. This calculated approach, it's not like you, Dom. Maybe you never really knew me. Dominic watched the water ripple under the breeze. Maybe none of them did. What happens after Tommy's birthday party? After this grand finale you've planned? I rebuild. Tommy and I start fresh. Pierce, Olivia, and Floyd live with what's left of their lives. And that's enough for you? Destroying them completely? Dominic's voice hardened. They didn't just have an affair, Howard. They conspired to undermine my business. They used my son as cover for their meetings. They laughed about how easily they were manipulating me. I have the texts, the emails, the recorded conversations. So yes, Complete destruction is exactly what they deserve. The day before Tommy's birthday, Dominic met with Judge Martinez in chambers, accompanied by Russell. They presented evidence of Olivia's involvement in the business espionage, the text messages discussing using Tommy as an alibi, and documentation of her increasingly erratic behavior since being served divorce papers. Mr. Hawthorne, Judge Martinez said after reviewing the evidence, "While these materials are certainly troubling, I'm concerned about your request for emergency, full custody with supervised visitation only. That's an extreme measure." "Your Honor," Dominic replied calmly, "I've never interfered with Olivia's relationship with our son. I've encouraged it, even knowing what I know. But her recent behavior has become increasingly unpredictable. She's appeared at Tommy's school twice, attempting to remove him without authorization. She sent him disturbing late-night text messages blaming me for destroying their family." The judge frowned. "Those texts are concerning. Tommy's welfare is my only concern. I'm not seeking to punish Olivia by limiting her access to our son. I'm seeking to protect him from the fallout of her choices until she stabilizes." After further discussion, Judge Martinez signed the emergency custody order. Olivia would be permitted supervised visitation only, pending a full hearing after psychiatric evaluation. As they left the courthouse, Russell glanced at Dominic. "That went better than expected. Martinez is usually more hesitant with emergency orders." The evidence was compelling. Dominic checked his watch. "Is everything arranged for tomorrow?" "Yes. The delivery will arrive at 2 p.m., as requested, and the documents are prepared exactly as you specified." Dominic nodded. "Perfect. Tommy deserves to know that his future is secure, regardless of what happens between his mother and me." That night, Dominic tucked Tommy into bed at the lake house. "Big day tomorrow, buddy. 9 years old. Practically a grown-up." Tommy grinned sleepily. "Will Mom be at my party?" "Yes, she'll be there." Dominic smoothed Tommy's hair. "And lots of your friends. And a very special surprise. Better than last year's drone from Mr. Pierce?" Something cold flickered in Dominic's eyes, quickly masked. "Much better. Something no one can ever take away from you." As Tommy drifted off to sleep, Dominic returned to the deck with a glass of whiskey. His phone showed 6 missed calls from Olivia, 3 from Pierce, and 1 from Floyd. He deleted them all without listening to the voicemails. Tomorrow, the foundation he'd been meticulously building for months would finally support the full weight of his justice. And everyone who had betrayed him would understand exactly who Dominic Hawthorne really was. Chapter 6, Revelations. Tommy's birthday dawned bright and clear. Dominic spent the morning setting up decorations at their main house. Balloons, streamers, and a space-themed cake, Tommy's latest obsession. The party was scheduled for 1 p.m., with the special delivery arranged for 2 p.m. At noon, Dominic received a call from the security company monitoring the property. "Mr. Hawthorne, we have an unauthorized entry attempt at your rear gate. A Ms. Olivia Hawthorne is trying to access the property before the designated time. Is she alone?" "Yes, sir. Allow her entry, but monitor her movements." 15 minutes later, Olivia stormed into the kitchen where Dominic was arranging snacks. "How dare you get an emergency custody order?" Her eyes were red-rimmed, her normally perfect appearance disheveled. "Supervised visitation? Psychiatric evaluation? You're trying to make me look crazy." Dominic continued arranging fruit on a platter. "The evidence speaks for itself, Olivia. Your behavior has been erratic and potentially harmful to Tommy, because you've systematically destroyed everything in my life. My career, my reputation, your affair." Dominic finally looked at her. "Your conspiracy with Pierce to undermine my business? Your use of our son as cover for your meetings?" She faltered momentarily, then rallied. "It wasn't like that. Alistair and I, we fell in love. It happens, Dom. Marriages end. But this scorched earth campaign you've launched, it's insane. No, what's insane is thinking you could betray me and face no consequences." He kept his voice calm, almost conversational. "Did you really believe I wouldn't find out? That I wouldn't protect what's mine? Tommy is not a possession. On that, we agree." Dominic checked his watch. "Guests will be arriving soon. You're welcome to stay for the party, Tommy wants you here. But if you cause a scene, security will escort you out. Olivia's shoulders slumped. What happened to you, Dom? You were never this cold, this calculating. I was always this person. You just never gave me reason to show it. He handed her a stack of plates. Make yourself useful. The children's table needs setting. For the next hour, they worked in silent tension, preparing for the party. Guests began arriving. Tommy's friends from school, Howard and his family, Russell and his wife, and various neighbors and friends. Tommy excitedly greeted everyone, proudly showing off his space-themed decorations. At 1:45 p.m., a commotion at the front door drew Dominic's attention. Alistair Pierce was arguing with the security guard. "Sir, you're not on the approved guest list," the guard was saying. "This is ridiculous. I was invited. Ask Olivia." Dominic approached. "Is there a problem?" Pierce turned, his handsome face haggard with stress. "Dominic, be reasonable. I just want to give Tommy his gift." "You weren't invited, Alistair," Olivia said. "Olivia doesn't make those decisions anymore." Dominic's voice was quiet but firm. "Tommy's party is for family and friends. You're neither." Pierce's expression hardened. "This vendetta has gone far enough. You've destroyed my company, my marriage, my reputation. What more do you want? I want you to leave. Now." For a moment, it seemed Pierce might argue further. Then his shoulders sagged. "Fine, but this isn't over, Hawthorne. No one can sustain the level of malice you've demonstrated without it eventually consuming them." As Pierce turned to leave, Tommy spotted him from across the yard. "Mr. Pierce, did you bring another cool present like last year?" The adults froze. Pierce recovered first, forcing a smile. "Not this year, Tommy. I just stopped by to wish you happy birthday." Olivia hurried over, positioning herself protectively near Tommy. "Alistair was just leaving, honey." Tommy looked confused. "But Dad said Mr. Pierce gave you rides to work sometimes. Can't he stay for cake?" An uncomfortable silence fell. Dominic stepped forward. "Tommy, why don't you show your friends the new telescope on the deck? It's all set up." As Tommy led his friends away, Pierce and Olivia exchanged panicked glances. Dominic merely watched them, his expression unreadable. "How long have you known?" Olivia whispered. "Long enough." Dominic checked his watch again. "Mr. Pierce should leave now. The delivery will be arriving soon." "What delivery?" Pierce demanded. Before Dominic could answer, the security guard approached again. "Mr. Hawthorne, there's a delivery person at the gate. Says he has a package for Master Tommy that requires signature." "Perfect timing. Let him through." A few minutes later, a uniformed delivery man entered the backyard carrying a large envelope. "Package from Master Tommy, from Mr. Jonathan. It seems to be the deed to—" Dominic interrupted smoothly. "Tommy, come here, buddy. You have a special delivery." Tommy ran over excitedly. "What is it, Dad?" "It's from your grandfather, Jonathan. Remember I told you about him?" Tommy nodded solemnly. "Your dad who died before I was born." "That's right. Before he passed, he set up something special for you. Something that would be given to you on your 9th birthday." Olivia approached, confusion evident on her face. "Dom, what is this about?" "Your father never." "Actually, he did." Dominic turned to the delivery man. "Please read the full delivery notice." The man cleared his throat. "Package from Master Tommy, from a Mr. Jonathan Hawthorne, posthumously delivered as instructed. It seems to be the deed to Hawthorne Lake and all surrounding properties, totaling 500 acres, including Lakeside Peninsula, now registered in the Hawthorne Family Trust with Thomas Hawthorne named as primary beneficiary." Olivia's jaw dropped. Pierce, who had lingered despite being asked to leave, went pale. "Lakeside Peninsula?" Pierce repeated. That's where my development is being built?" "Yes." Dominic smiled coldly. "Or rather, was being built. The trust now owns the land, the access roads, and the utility corridors. And the trustees, Howard and Russell, have clear instructions about development restrictions." Tommy was looking at the large envelope in confusion. "On a lake." Dominic knelt beside him. "You own the lake where we've been staying, buddy. Your grandfather wanted you to have it when you were old enough to appreciate it. It means no one can ever take it away from you." Pierce stepped forward, his face contorted with rage. "This is impossible. I have deeds, permits, based on falsified documents and bribes." Dominic stood, positioning himself between Pierce and Tommy. My father purchased that land 30 years ago. It's been in a family trust ever since, with instructions for transfer to Tommy on his 9th birthday. Your purchase was from a shell company that never actually owned the property. Your real dad couldn't even afford a present like this, Pierce snarled, gesturing to the expensive drone sitting among Tommy's gifts, the one he brought despite not being invited. Tommy looked at Dominic with momentary confusion. Then understanding dawned in his young eyes as he realized Pierce had tried to suggest Dominic wasn't his biological father. Olivia gasped. "Alistair, how could you say that to a child?" But the damage was calculated. In that brief moment of doubt, as Tommy glanced between Dominic and Pierce, the final piece of Dominic's plan fell into place. "My real dad," Tommy said slowly, looking up at Dominic, "is the one who's always been there, who takes me fishing and helps with my homework." Dominic squeezed Tommy's shoulder, then addressed Pierce with deadly calm. "Security will show you out now. If you ever speak to my son again, the consequences will make what you've experienced so far seem like a gentle warning." As security escorted a protesting Pierce from the property, Dominic turned to the silent, shocked guests. "Everyone, please enjoy the party. Tommy has a cake to cut, and I believe there are still presents to open." Gradually, the festive atmosphere returned. Tommy, resilient as children often are, was soon excitedly explaining to his friends that he owned an entire lake. Olivia remained shell-shocked and silent, watching from the periphery as her son celebrated without needing her. Later, as guests began to leave, Olivia approached Dominic. "Was this your plan all along? To use Tommy's birthday to deliver the final blow?" "Tommy's birthday was always going to be special," Dominic replied. "The timing of everything else was fortuitous. And now what? You've destroyed Alistair. You've ruined my career and reputation. You've taken my son. Is your revenge complete?" Dominic regarded her thoughtfully. "It was never about revenge, Olivia. It was about consequences, about ensuring that people understand that every action has a response." He gestured toward Tommy, laughing with his remaining friends, "and about making sure that my son knows his father will move heaven and earth to protect him, even from his own mother's poor choices." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant to hurt Tommy, but you did, when you used him as cover for your affair, when you chose Pierce over his stability and happiness." Dominic's voice remained even, without heat. "Your supervised visitation begins next Wednesday. 3 hours, with the court-appointed supervisor present. I suggest you use that time to begin rebuilding whatever relationship you can with our son." As Olivia turned to leave, Dominic added, "Oh, and Olivia, the lake house where you and Pierce used to meet when you claimed to be at design conferences? It's part of Tommy's trust now, too. I've arranged for it to be donated to a children's camp for underprivileged youth. Seems fitting, don't you think?" Her face crumpled as she walked away, the full weight of everything she had lost finally sinking in. That night, after Tommy was in bed, Dominic sat alone on the deck of their home, nursing a whiskey and watching the stars. Howard joined him, taking the adjacent chair. "Hell of a party," Howard commented. "Tommy enjoyed it. The boy seemed happy, yes." Howard studied his friend's profile. "And you? Did you get what you wanted?" Dominic considered the question. Justice was served. The guilty were punished. Tommy's future is secure. That's not what I asked. Dominic turned to face his oldest friend. What I wanted was for them to understand exactly who they chose to betray. For them to recognize that actions have consequences. And yes, Howard, I got precisely what I wanted. Howard nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I think Tommy is lucky to have you as his father." A rare, genuine smile crossed Dominic's face. "That, my friend, is worth everything." As Howard left, Dominic remained on the deck, contemplating the stars. The foundation of his life had been shaken, but not destroyed. He had rebuilt something stronger, more honest, and ultimately more enduring. Tommy would grow up knowing his father's true nature, not just the builder of houses, but the protector of what mattered most. And anyone who ever considered crossing Dominic Hawthorne in the future would remember the fate of those who had tried before. Chapter 7. Aftermath. 6 months after Tommy's birthday party, Dominic stood at the edge of Hawthorne Lake, watching his son skip stones across the placid surface. The lake house, now fully renovated, had become their primary residence. The city house sold to create distance from painful memories. 7 skips, Tommy shouted triumphantly. Did you see that, Dad? I did. You're getting better every day. Tommy beamed. Then his expression grew more serious. Mom's coming tomorrow, right? Yes, for your school play. Front row, as promised. The court-mandated psychiatric evaluation had eventually granted Olivia unsupervised visitation rights, though Dominic retained primary custody. In the months since the birthday party, she had slowly begun rebuilding her relationship with Tommy, careful to keep their interactions positive and free from the tensions between her and Dominic. Is she bringing her new friend? Tommy asked cautiously. Olivia had recently begun dating a teacher from Tommy's school, a relationship Dominic had thoroughly investigated before deciding the man posed no threat to his son. I believe so. Is that okay with you? Tommy shrugged. He's nice. He helps me with math sometimes. Dominic nodded, filing away the information. Good. Math is important. As they headed back to the house for dinner, Dominic's phone rang. Russell. I'll be right in, buddy. Start washing up, he told Tommy before answering. Russell, what's the update? Pierce's appeal was denied. The property remains in Tommy's trust, and the development project is officially dead. And the criminal charges? He took the plea deal. 18 months in a minimum security facility, 5 years probation, and restitution payments to the affected homebuyers. What about Floyd? Probation only in exchange for his testimony. He's moved to Arizona, trying to start over. Dominic absorbed this information with quiet satisfaction. And the deputy mayor? Nelson resigned last week as part of his own plea agreement. The FBI investigation is expanding to other developments and officials. Perfect. Dominic gazed out at the lake. And the community center construction? On schedule. The Hawthorne Foundation's first major project will open next spring. After Tommy's birthday revelation, Dominic had established the Hawthorne Foundation, dedicated to building safe, affordable housing and community spaces. The first project, intentionally located adjacent to what would have been Pierce's luxury development, was a community center providing after-school programs, job training, and resources for families in need. Any word from Olivia about the foundation board position? Dominic asked. Her attorney says she's considering it. It would be good optics for her rehabilitation in the community. Dominic had recently offered Olivia a non-voting advisory position on the foundation board, a calculated move that would show the community he was willing to co-parent civilly while keeping her firmly under his control. Keep me posted. And Russell? Thank you for everything. That evening, after dinner and homework, Dominic sat in his office reviewing the latest foundation plans when Tommy appeared in the doorway. Dad, can I ask you something? Always, buddy. Tommy entered hesitantly, clutching a framed photo, the one of Dominic and Floyd that he'd found months ago. Why do you still have this picture if Mr. Callahan was a bad person? Dominic considered the question carefully. Floyd made bad choices that hurt our family. But before that, he helped me build something important. The picture reminds me to be careful who I trust. Mom says people can change, that everyone deserves forgiveness. Your mom has a perspective, and there's wisdom in forgiveness. Dominic set the photo aside, but there's also wisdom in remembering that actions have consequences. Tommy frowned, processing this. Is that why Mr. Pierce had to go to jail? Because of consequences? Exactly. Mr. Pierce broke the law. He cheated people. Those actions had consequences. But you didn't put him in jail. The police did. Dominic smiled slightly. The police enforced the law. I simply made sure the truth came to light. Tommy seemed satisfied with this explanation. I'm glad we live at the lake now. I like it better than our old house. Me too, buddy. After Tommy went to bed, Dominic poured himself a whiskey and opened his laptop. An email from Olivia awaited him. Dom, I've decided to accept the foundation board position. Not for you, but for Tommy. He deserves to see his parents working together on something positive. The past year has been a harsh lesson in consequences, as you would say. I've lost almost everything that once mattered to me. But I'm rebuilding, just as you've always been so good at doing. I'll never forgive you for the calculated way you dismantled my life. But I understand now what drove you to it. And perhaps, in some twisted way, I deserved it. See you at Tommy's play tomorrow. Olivia. Dominic read the email twice, then deleted it without responding. Forgiveness had never been part of his plan, nor had he sought her understanding. The consequences she had experienced were exactly what her actions warranted. No more, no less. His phone buzzed with a text from Howard. Dinner tomorrow after Tommy's play? We should discuss the Foundation's next project. Dominic replied affirmatively, then set his phone aside. Howard remained his closest friend, though their relationship had been strained by the events of the past year. Howard had questioned the extent of Dominic's retribution, concerned that the cold, calculating side of his friend had overtaken the man he once knew. But Dominic knew better. He wasn't changed. He was revealed. The mask of amiable builder and devoted family man had simply slipped to show the steel beneath. The unforgiving core that had always existed, waiting for a reason to emerge. The next day, Dominic sat in the school auditorium, watching Tommy perform in his class play. 3 rows behind him sat Floyd Callahan, now returned from Arizona for a brief visit. Dominic had spotted him entering, but gave no indication of recognition. In the row behind Dominic sat Olivia with her new boyfriend, maintaining a respectful distance. After the performance, as parents and children mingled in the lobby, Floyd approached cautiously. Dominic. Dominic turned, his expression neutral. Floyd, I didn't expect to see you here. My nephew is in Tommy's class. Floyd shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to say, don't. Dominic's voice was quiet but firm. Whatever amends you're hoping to make, save them. We're done. I know I can never fix what I did, but I want you to know I regret it. Every day. Regret is the luxury of those who've been caught, Floyd. It means nothing to me. Floyd nodded resignedly. I understand. For what it's worth, the Foundation's work, it's impressive. You've created something good from all this. I've always built things to last, Floyd. Even my retribution. Dominic gave a thin smile. Enjoy your visit. I suggest making it brief. As Floyd walked away, Olivia approached with Tommy. He was amazing, she said, smiling proudly at their son. He was, Dominic agreed. An awkward silence fell between them, broken by Tommy's drama teacher calling him over to take photos with his classmates. I've accepted the board position, Olivia said once Tommy was out of earshot. Russell informed me. I have some ideas for the Women's Resource Center. Design concepts that could. Submit them through the proper channels. The board will review them at the next meeting. Olivia sighed. Are we always going to be like this, Dom? Cold and formal. This is cordial co-parenting, Olivia. It's more than many in our situation manage. And more than I deserve, according to you. Dominic finally looked directly at her. What you deserve isn't relevant anymore. What matters is what Tommy deserves. 2 parents who can interact without hostility. That's what I'm providing. Before she could respond, Tommy ran back to them, excited about his performance. Dominic smoothly shifted into proud father mode, the momentary tension with Olivia invisible to their son. Later that evening, over dinner with Howard in an upscale restaurant overlooking Puget Sound, Dominic shared his plans for the Foundation's expansion. 3 new projects next year, he explained. The Women's Resource Center, a vocational training facility, and affordable housing near the university. Howard nodded approvingly. Ambitious, and funded entirely by the settlement from Pierce's company, primarily. Poetic justice. Howard studied his friend. You've channeled everything into this foundation. The revenge, the anger, even the proceeds from destroying your enemies. It's almost as if you're trying to balance some cosmic scale. There's nothing cosmic about it. Dominic sipped his wine. It's simple mathematics. They took from me, so I took from them. Now I'm building something better from the remains. And are you happy, Dom? Truly. The question caught Dominic off guard. Happiness had never been his metric for success. I have Tommy. I have purpose. The people who betrayed me have faced justice. That's not what I asked. Dominic considered the question more deeply. Happiness is for people who haven't seen behind the curtain. Howard. I've seen what people are capable of, the betrayals, the calculations, the selfishness. I don't expect happiness. I expect integrity in my dealings and consequences for those who lack it. That's a cold way to live. It's an honest way to live. Dominic raised his glass. To honesty, then. Howard reluctantly clinked glasses. To honesty, and maybe someday, to something warmer. Chapter 8. Reckonings. 1 year after Tommy's fateful birthday party, Dominic stood in the newly completed Hawthorne Community Center, surveying the space with satisfaction. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked what would have been Pierce's lakeside development, now a nature preserve established by Tommy's trust. Mr. Hawthorne? A young woman approached, clipboard in hand. The reporters are ready for the press conference whenever you are. Thank you, Jessica. 5 minutes. As the assistant walked away, Dominic felt a presence beside him. Howard had arrived, looking distinguished in a tailored suit. Quite the achievement, Howard commented, gesturing to the bustling community center. From blueprint to reality in record time. When you don't have to navigate bribery channels, construction moves efficiently. Dominic straightened his tie. Is Tommy here? In the game room with the other kids. Olivia dropped him off. She's in the audience for your speech. Dominic nodded, unsurprised. Despite their history, Olivia had become an active contributor to the foundation, redesigning her career around community-focused architecture. Her expertise was valuable, and Dominic was pragmatic enough to utilize it, maintaining strict professional boundaries. Any word from our recently released friend? Howard asked carefully. Alastair Pierce had completed his prison sentence 2 months earlier, emerging from incarceration a shadow of his former self. His wealthy friends had abandoned him, his ex-wife had remarried, and his business empire had been divided among creditors and lawsuit settlements. My sources say he's living in Portland, trying to rebuild with a small residential construction company. Dominic's expression remained neutral, operating under his mother's maiden name. And that satisfies you? Knowing he's starting over from nothing. Justice isn't about satisfaction, Howard. It's about equilibrium. Pierce's actions damaged lives. His consequences reflect that damage. Before Howard could respond, Jessica returned to escort Dominic to the press conference. For the next hour, he spoke eloquently about the Foundation's mission, the community center's programs, and the upcoming projects. Reporters asked predictable questions about funding, staffing, and future plans, all of which Dominic handled with practiced ease. Until the final question. Mr. Hawthorne, called a journalist from the back row, your foundation rose from the ashes of the Meridian property scandal. Critics suggest the timing was opportunistic, that you leveraged Alastair Pierce's downfall for personal gain and public rehabilitation. How do you respond? A tense silence fell over the room. Dominic located the speaker, a young reporter he didn't recognize. An interesting perspective, Dominic replied calmly, but factually incorrect. The Hawthorne Foundation was established using personal funds and legally obtained settlements. As for rehabilitation, he allowed himself a small smile. I wasn't the one who needed rehabilitating. Scattered laughter broke the tension. The press conference concluded, and Dominic moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and discussing future partnerships. He spotted Olivia across the room, deep in conversation with the Foundation's education director. Their eyes met briefly. She gave a professional nod, which he returned. Later, as the crowd thinned, Jessica approached again. Mr. Hawthorne, there's someone asking to speak with you privately. He says it's urgent. Did he give a name? Benjamin Walsh. He says you knew his father. Dominic stilled. Senator Walsh, whose wife had served on charity boards with Pierce's ex-wife Gwen. The connection was distant, but significant. Show him to my office. Minutes later, a young man in his early 30s entered Dominic's office. Tall and well-dressed, with a confident bearing of old money and political connections. Mr. Hawthorne, he extended his hand. Thank you for seeing me. Dominic shook it firmly. What can I do for Senator Walsh's son? Benjamin smiled tightly. Former senator. My father passed last year. My condolences. Thank you. Benjamin settled into a chair. I'll be direct, Mr. Hawthorne. I'm here about Alastair Pierce. Dominic's expression remained impassive. Pierce is no longer my concern. Perhaps not, but you're certainly his. Benjamin leaned forward. He's obsessed with you, with what you did to him. He talks about nothing else. That sounds like a psychiatric issue, not a business one. It became my business when he approached my development firm with information he claims could be valuable to us. Information about you. Now Dominic was intrigued. What kind of information? He wouldn't say specifically, just that it involved something from your early days. Before Hawthorne Construction became successful, Benjamin studied Dominic's face. He seemed to think it would interest me given my family's history with certain properties in the region. Dominic considered this. There was only one connection between his early career and the Walsh family. A parcel of land that had been central to his first major project, a project that had launched Hawthorne Construction's reputation. Why come to me with this? Benjamin sat back. My father always said you were a man of integrity in a business often lacking it. I'm not interested in Pierce's vendetta, but I am interested in knowing if there's any legitimacy to his claims before I waste resources investigating. And what would you do with this information if it proved legitimate? That would depend on its nature. Benjamin's expression hardened slightly. My family protects its interests, Mr. Hawthorne, as I believe you protect yours. The implied threat was subtle but clear. Dominic made a quick calculation. Pierce is grasping at straws. Whatever he suggested about my early projects or their connection to your family's properties is desperation from a broken man. You seem very certain. I am. Dominic stood, signaling the end of the meeting. But I appreciate the professional courtesy of this conversation. Your father raised you well. Benjamin rose, extending his hand again. He did. He also taught me to verify, then trust. I'll be looking into Pierce's claims, Mr. Hawthorne. Not out of malice, but due diligence. You'll find nothing worth your time. For both our sakes, I hope you're right. After Benjamin left, Dominic immediately called Russell. I need a complete background check on Benjamin Walsh, and I need to know who Pierce has been meeting with since his release. Something concerning? Russell asked. Potentially. Pierce has apparently approached Walsh with claims about my early projects. Specifically, I believe, the Westridge development. Russell was silent for a moment. That could be problematic, only if there's evidence. And we both know there isn't. There's always evidence, Dom. Sometimes it's just buried deep enough that no one thinks to look for it. Dominic ended the call and stared out the window at the nature preserve that had once been Pierce's dream development. The man was more resourceful than he'd given him credit for. Approaching the Walsh family was strategic. They had the resources and potential motivation to cause problems if Pierce's information proved valuable. That evening, as Dominic drove Tommy home from the community center opening, his son was unusually quiet. Everything okay, buddy? He asked. Tommy fidgeted with his seatbelt. Mom said Mr. Pierce is out of jail now. Dominic kept his eyes on the road. That's right. He served his sentence. Is he going to come back? Try to hurt us? No, buddy. Mr. Pierce has no reason to come near us, and he knows better than to try. Tommy was silent for another moment. Dad, did you make Mr. Pierce go to jail? Dominic chose his words carefully. Mr. Pierce broke the law, Tommy. I made sure the truth about that was known to the right people. The law did the rest. But if you hadn't told, he might not have gone to jail. That's right. And that wouldn't have been justice. Tommy seemed to consider this. Mom says sometimes it's better to forgive people than to punish them. Your mom has her perspective. Dominic glanced at his son. What do you think? Tommy shrugged. I think it depends on what they did. And if they're really sorry. That's wise, buddy. Very wise. Later that night, after Tommy was asleep, Dominic received a text from an unknown number. You should have taken my offer at the birthday party. Now we'll see what the Walsh family thinks about the original Westridge surveys. Dominic stared at the message, then blocked the number. Pierce was becoming a nuisance again, and nuisances in Dominic's world were eliminated, not tolerated. The next morning, Dominic met with Russell in his office at the foundation. What did you find on Benjamin Walsh? Russell placed a folder on the desk. Harvard Business School. Took over Walsh Development after his father's death. Clean record, respected in the industry. Recently engaged to Congressman Taylor's daughter. And his connection to Pierce? That's where it gets interesting. Russell opened the folder to reveal photographs. Pierce approached him 3 times in the past month. The final meeting included this woman. Dominic examined the photo of an elderly woman with a cane. Who is she? Margaret Westridge. Dominic's expression darkened. The original property owner. Exactly. Her family sold the Westridge tract to your company in 2010, your first major development. That sale was completely legitimate. All paperwork was in order. Yes, but according to my sources, Pierce has been suggesting otherwise. He's apparently told Walsh and Ms. Westridge that there were irregularities in the environmental impact studies, specifically regarding the wetland designation. The Westridge property had contained a small wetland area that had been reclassified prior to development. A completely legal process, though one that had involved substantial paperwork and several meetings with planning officials. Those studies were conducted by certified professionals and approved by regulatory authorities, Dominic said firmly. Yes, but one of those professionals was Floyd Callahan's cousin, and one of those regulatory officials later worked for you as a consultant. Pierce is suggesting collusion. Dominic absorbed this information quietly. What's Walsh's interest? His company owns adjacent property. If the Westridge environmental studies were fraudulent, it could affect his development plans. And the Westridge family might have grounds for a lawsuit claiming they sold under false pretenses. The statute of limitations has long passed. For criminal charges, yes. For civil action, it's more complicated, especially if they claim the information was deliberately concealed. Dominic stood and walked to the window. What does Pierce hope to gain from this? Revenge, partially, but also legitimacy. If he can prove you engage in similar practices to what he was convicted for, it validates his claim that he was singled out unfairly. How much do they know? According to my source, Pierce claims to have copies of original surveys that contradict the final environmental impact statement. But he hasn't produced them yet. Because they don't exist, Dominic said firmly. The surveys were conducted properly. Russell was silent for a moment. Dom, were they? Dominic turned to face his longtime attorney and friend. Are you asking me if I falsified environmental studies, Russell? After all these years, I'm asking if there's anything I need to know to protect you and the foundation. The only thing you need to know is that Pierce is desperate and dangerous. He'll manufacture evidence if he has to. Dominic returned to his desk. I want surveillance on him. I want to know everyone he meets with. And I want the complete original files on the Westridge development. Everything we have. After Russell left, Dominic sat alone, contemplating his next move. Pierce was attempting to undermine the foundation of Dominic's legitimacy, the very thing Dominic had used to destroy him. It was a calculated move, targeting the one project from Dominic's past that had potential vulnerabilities. The question wasn't whether Pierce could prove wrongdoing. Dominic was confident he couldn't. The question was whether the mere suggestion of impropriety, coming from someone with insider knowledge of the industry, could create enough doubt to damage the foundation and Dominic's reputation. And that was a risk Dominic couldn't afford to take. Not when everything he'd built for Tommy's future depended on the integrity of the Hawthorne name. Chapter 9. Resolution. 3 days after Benjamin Walsh's visit, Dominic received an encrypted email from Russell containing scanned documents. The subject line read simply, "Found by my investigator in Pierce's apartment." Dominic opened the files to find what appeared to be original environmental surveys of the Westridge property, surveys that contradicted the official reports submitted for the development permits. The documents were dated from 2010 and contained handwritten notes in what looked like Floyd Callahan's handwriting, detailing how to revise the wetland boundaries. If authentic, these documents would support Pierce's allegations of fraud and potentially expose Dominic to civil liability. More importantly, they would undermine the foundation's integrity and tarnish Tommy's inheritance. Dominic immediately called Russell. "These are forgeries. Are you certain? They look convincing. Floyd's handwriting is close but inconsistent. And the letterhead. Look at the logo. We changed design firms in 2009. These use the newer logo on supposedly older documents." Good catch. Russell sounded relieved. But it means Pierce is actively fabricating evidence. How did your investigator obtain these? Paid a cleaning service employee for access. Completely off the books. Make copies, then have them returned exactly as found. Pierce mustn't know we're aware of his plan. The next day, Dominic received a formal letter from Benjamin Walsh requesting a meeting to discuss historical matters relating to the Westridge development. The letter mentioned that Margaret Westridge and her attorney would be present, along with other interested parties. Instead of responding directly, Dominic called Howard. "I need your help with something delicate." 2 hours later, Howard arrived at Dominic's office. After ensuring privacy, Dominic explained the situation. "Pierce is manufacturing evidence to suggest I fraudulently developed the Westridge property. He's convinced Benjamin Walsh and the original property owner to investigate." Howard frowned. "But the development was legitimate, right?" Dominic gave him a long look. "Of course it was. But perception matters as much as reality. If Pierce can create enough doubt, he could damage the foundation. What do you need from me? Margaret Westridge trusts you. Your firm handled her late husband's estate. I need you to meet with her privately before Walsh's planned confrontation." Howard hesitated. To do what exactly? To show her these. Dominic handed over a folder containing photographs and documents. These are the original, authentic surveys of her property, along with records of the full payment her family received, considerably above market value at the time. Howard reviewed the materials. "And if she asks why I'm involved, tell her the truth. That you're concerned she's being used as a pawn in Pierce's vendetta against me. That her reputation could be damaged if she associates with his false claims. Do you think she'll listen? She's a practical woman from a business-minded family. Show her the financial records, especially the comparison showing how much more she received than similar properties sold that year." Howard nodded slowly. "And Walsh? I'll handle Walsh separately." After Howard left, Dominic made another call to Senator Walsh's widow, Elizabeth. They had served together on charity boards years ago, and while not close friends, they shared mutual respect. "Elizabeth, it's Dominic Hawthorne. I apologize for calling unexpectedly, but I'm concerned about a situation involving Benjamin." He explained that her son was being drawn into a potentially embarrassing situation by Alastair Pierce, a convicted felon with a personal vendetta. "Benjamin is a smart businessman," Elizabeth replied. "He wouldn't pursue this without reason. Pierce is presenting forged documents, Elizabeth, documents that appear to show irregularities in the Westridge development. But they're fabrications designed to damage my foundation and reputation. Have you spoken to Benjamin about this? I want to speak with you first, out of respect for your late husband. Senator Walsh and I didn't always agree on policy, but we respected each other's integrity." There was a pause before Elizabeth responded. "I'll speak with Benjamin. I can't promise he'll withdraw from this matter, but I'll ensure he understands the potential complications of associating with someone like Pierce. That's all I ask." "Thank you, Elizabeth." The following day, Dominic received a brief email from Benjamin Walsh. Meeting postponed indefinitely. Further review of preliminary evidence indicates insufficient basis for proceeding. Regards, B. Walsh. Howard called that evening. Margaret Westridge has withdrawn her participation in any investigation of the Westridge development. She was quite emphatic about not wanting to be involved in a feud between developers. Dominic allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. And Pierce, according to my sources, he's furious. Apparently showed up at Walsh's office demanding an explanation and was escorted out by security. Perfect. Dominic gazed out at the lake, watching Tommy skip stones in the fading light. One final piece to attend to. The next morning, Dominic visited the small office Pierce had established in Portland. The secretary, not recognizing him, asked if he had an appointment. "No, but Mr. Pierce will want to see me. Tell him Dominic Hawthorne is here." Moments later, a visibly agitated Pierce burst from his office. "You, how dare you show up here? Is there somewhere we can speak privately?" Dominic asked calmly. Pierce glared, then jerked his head toward his office. Once inside with the door closed, he turned on Dominic. "Here to gloat?" Walsh pulled out. "The Westridge woman won't return my calls. You've poisoned everyone against me. Again, I'm here to deliver a message, Alastair. One final message. I don't want to hear anything you have to say." Dominic placed a USB drive on the desk. "This contains footage from your recent meetings with Walsh and Margaret Westridge. It also contains clear images of the forged documents you created. documents that constitute criminal fraud. Pierce paled. You're bluffing. Am I? Dominic sat down uninvited. You're on probation, Alistair. Criminal fraud would send you back to prison, this time to a considerably less comfortable facility than your previous accommodation. What do you want? For you to disappear. Permanently. Not just from my life and Tommy's, but from this region entirely. Pierce laughed bitterly. You want me to just abandon everything and leave? Because you say so? No, because it's your only viable option. Dominic leaned forward. The alternative is that I provide this evidence to your probation officer and the FBI. You return to prison. Upon release, you'll find that I've established a foundation grant specifically designed to fund legal representation for anyone who believes they were defrauded by your business practices. There are plenty of former clients who would jump at financial backing to pursue claims against you. You're insane. This isn't vendetta, Alistair. It's mathematics. You try to destroy what I built. You failed. Now you're trying again and failing again. The sensible choice is to acknowledge defeat and move on. Pierce stared at him, hatred burning in his eyes. You destroyed everything I had. My company, my marriage, my reputation. No, Dominic stood. You destroyed those things when you chose to cheat, lie, and manipulate. I merely ensured you face the consequences of those choices. He moved toward the door. You have 48 hours to make arrangements to leave. After that, the evidence goes to the authorities. And if I agree, you'll just let me walk away. As long as you never contact me, my family, or anyone connected to us again. As long as you establish your new life at least 500 miles from here. And as long as you understand that if you ever attempt to retaliate again, the consequences will make your previous experiences seem pleasant by comparison. Pierce slumped in his chair, the fight visibly draining from him. You really are a monster, Hawthorne. No, I'm just a man who protects what's his. Something you should have considered before targeting my family. Dominic opened the door. 48 hours, Alistair. Make them count. 3 days later, Russell confirmed that Pierce had sold his fledgling business and purchased a one-way ticket to Miami. The threat was neutralized, this time permanently. That weekend, Dominic and Tommy stood on the dock at Hawthorne Lake, fishing poles in hand. The morning sun glinted off the water, and birds called from the surrounding forest that Tommy's trust now protected in perpetuity. Dad, Tommy asked, reeling in his line, are we going to the foundation opening next week? The one for the new housing project. Absolutely. It's an important day. Tommy nodded thoughtfully. Mom says you're helping a lot of people now. That the foundation is doing good things. That's the goal, buddy. To build something meaningful. Something that lasts. Is that why you were so angry when Mr. Pierce and Mom tried to hurt her business? Because you were building something important. Dominic looked down at his son, perceptive, intelligent, and mercifully innocent of the full scope of adult betrayals and retributions. Partly, but mostly because they betrayed trust. When people work together, they have to trust each other. Breaking that trust doesn't just hurt feelings. It damages everything connected to it. Like when Adam lied about breaking the window at school, and then everyone in class got in trouble. Something like that, yes. Tommy was quiet for a moment, then said, I'm glad the bad stuff is over. I like how things are now. Dominic put his arm around his son's shoulders. Me too, buddy. As they stood together on the dock, Dominic surveyed the kingdom he had defended and expanded. Not just the physical properties and business holdings, but the legacy he was creating for Tommy. A legacy built on the understanding that actions have consequences, that betrayal comes with a cost, and that real power lies not in forgiveness, but in the ability to deliver justice on your own terms. The foundation he had established would do